All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the year end tag, the year in review tag for 2025. And I am thrilled today to have these wonderful guests here with me to go through answers of this tag. And we hope that you'll all join us in the comment section or actually in the chat if you're here live. We'd love to hear your answers to this. So I'll just quickly say hello to Slay. Hello, hello. I'm so excited to go ahead and I'll just go ahead and quickly introduce my guests, but you all probably know these wonderful friends. So starting here over here is to the side of me is Brian from BellTube. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Joanna. Thank you for doing this today and inviting me. This is really cool.
Yay. Well, I'm excited to have you here. And we also have the library ladder. Hello, Bridger.
Good afternoon. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Yay. Oh, goodness. We love your voice so much. So it's always a pleasure to have you in a stream. And my friend Josh, who's also the co-owner of the Fireside Discord. Hi, Josh. How are you doing from Red Fury Books?
I'm great. I can't wait to just kind of recap the year a little bit here.
Yeah, I thought this would be a fun way to talk about books. Of course, there are going to be some repeat books from my top 10, and I'm sure that'll be the case for Brian and maybe for Josh as well. I know Bridger does not do end of the year content, so I was kind of joking that my doing this tag is also a way to find out what Bridger has been reading this last year. I'm always curious to hear his answers to this as well as everybody's. But yeah, I think it's a fun way to talk about some other things. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, feel free to add your answers into the comment section if you feel so inclined. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, favorite reread in 2025. I don't know if all of you have reread any books this last year, but we're going to pass around this question starting with Brian.
Oh, God, I'm going to start us off on the worst note possible. I don't reread books very often. So I had to think, what did I actually read? And in the bathroom, I have this Poo-Pourri toilet spray, which is like vanilla lavender, makes the whole bathroom smell lovely. And I've read the ingredients on this hundreds of times in 2025. So that's going to be my reread of the year.
All right. Poo-Pourri for
and
the first answer.
See, now you have like this diagonal corner, right? Where you've got this, your top right corner is one serious level. The bottom left corner is a totally different serious level. So I think we're in good shape here today.
All right. I don't usually reread a lot of books either, Brian, but I love the creativity behind your answer. So
thank you. It was I can tell you by heart what's in that lovely bathroom spray. I will pass the torch to the next person.
All right. And the next person is going to be, let's go to Josh, just right underneath.
So I need to start just like I did when we did this tag last year with a little disclaimer that some of my answers I'm lying. And the reason is I've not done my end of the year wrap up. I have two big videos to close out 2025. I have one that's going to be called New Favorites, Unmet Expectations, and Big Disappointments. That's going to be out in 2 weeks. And then the week after that is the Red Fury Book Awards, which I'll plug that because all three of the people on the screen are actually presenters in that video. So I'm really excited for that. That's when I really give out my favorite book series. So I made my list, and then there were like 10 prompts here, and then I changed like 4 of them and made it my number 2. So some of these are slightly less than maybe my favorite. So none of these are out and out lies. So I'm not going to pull up, my favorite reread was this horrible book that I shouldn't have reread or anything like that. So I just wanted to throw that disclaimer out here that occasionally on this video I am lying, but it's with a purpose. And it's only a little white lie because I always picked my number 2 choice for some of these categories.
That's
anyway,
yeah.
To stop belaboring the point, my favorite reread in 2025 was Power of the Dog by Dawn Winslow. Winslow became a priority author for me last year after I finished all the works of Dennis Lehane. I needed, because I still have Connolly that I read because he puts out several books a year, but in crime fiction, I wanted to start exploring Winslow, and I had read 2 of them, including this one. So I read this one and the rest of the Cartel trilogy, and this thing just blew me away. I equated it to this is epic fantasy style of crime fiction with just the level of detail and the world building and everything. It reads like a nonfiction work, and he doesn't pull punches. It's very very grim, very dark. There's one scene in particular in here that I wish I could forget because it's that dark. But this is just a tour de force of crime fiction. So this was my favorite reread of 2025.
Wow. Have any of you read that, The Power of the Dog, Bridger or Brian?
I have not.
Yeah, I'll endorse it. It's quite a read. Quite a read.
So it has to do with drug cartels. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a DEA agent that's he starts young and then he's trying to take down drug cartels in Mexico, and it's very very sprawling storytelling. And then there's 3 books actually. He wrote 2 sequels that just kind of continue that man's story, and it takes place over decades fighting these drug cartels. It's gritty, it's dark, it's great.
Nice. I did buy that book. I won't lie. Recently I bought it. So yeah, I've been hearing some praise for this book. I know that Jimmy has spoken highly of it. I know that StoryTube has also spoken highly of it, and you've spoken highly of it. And it's a subject that's very close to my heart because I have family in Mexico, and they have been directly hurt and assaulted and held at gunpoint by cartels. So it's something that I'm very curious about how that's told by Winslow's perspective in this story. Of course, I understand it's fiction, but yeah, I'm very curious about how he handles that topic.
Cool. I hope you enjoy it. Well, like it. I don't know if enjoy parts of it are pretty dark, but it's great.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, thank you for that. And then, Bridger, what is your choice for favorite reread in 2025?
I'm going to hedge slightly and present 2, one very briefly. So I haven't done a lot of rereads, or didn't in 2025, but I did do a few, and they were bangers. One of them that I'm going to talk first is The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey. This is a historical fiction mystery written or published around 1950. It's part of a series of mysteries featuring Inspector Alan Grant that Tey wrote. This novel is widely considered to be the pioneering historical fiction mystery novel. But the funny thing about it is it's not actually set in the past. It's set in the present day, or circa 1950, where Inspector Grant has a broken leg. He's stuck in a hospital, can't get out of bed, and he's bored. And so he decides he wants to solve a mystery from history, which is the mystery of the 2 princes in the tower. And what happened to them? Why did they disappear? Were they murdered by King Richard III? And so using simply historical documents and logic, he proceeds to go about, at least from his perspective, solving that mystery. And it's a great read. In fact, in 1990, it was voted by the British Crime Writers Association the greatest mystery of all time.
Wow.
Cool.
That was as of 1990, so probably there are some that have surpassed it at this point, but it's really a fun read. So it's both a mystery and historical fiction. But that was not actually my favorite reread. That was my number 2. My favorite one is perhaps my favorite Terry Pratchett story, or technically stories, because it's a trilogy, but it's all bound up in one book. And that is the Bromeliad trilogy, which is one that he wrote back in the late 80s for kids. The first novel is Truckers, then there's Diggers, and then there's Wings. And these are so much fun. They feature a common sort of type of character that he has in pretty much all of his kids' books, or most of his kids' books, because they show up in the Carpet People, they show up in his Tiffany Aching Discworld novels. And that's little people. And by little people, I mean little people, tiny people. In this case, they are called gnomes, and a community of them live in a stately old department store in England that, as far as they're concerned, is the universe. They don't even realize that there is a wider world outside this department store. Everything revolves around this department store. And then they unexpectedly discover that the store is about to be demolished. And so they have to find someplace else to live. And this is such a clever novel. And it has typical Pratchett type humor. But one of the things I really like about it is the humor isn't layered on quite as thickly. It is, I mean, it's still Pratchett humor, but it's so clever. And it's the kind of humor and social commentary that I would really, I think fits really well for kids. It introduces a lot of serious topics to them, but it does it in such a lighthearted way that they can actually absorb it and think about it, and it'll resonate with them. I mean, my regret is my kids didn't read this when they were younger. I really wish they had. But it's really fun. I don't want to spoil too much because, you know, in their search for a home, they're searching for a new home, but they're also searching for an old home. And these gnomes don't know what they don't know. I mean, it's a form of the Dunning-Kruger effect in how Pratchett characterizes their personalities, their society. You know, they overestimate their own abilities and their own knowledge, and they discount outside knowledge and outside information that is presented to them. They're like, oh, no, that doesn't matter because we don't actually know that, when in fact it's really important and they should pay attention to it. So anyway, Terry Pratchett's Bromeliad trilogy, highly recommend. Very fun.
That sounds like my
Very
childhood, like something I would have adored. Actually, I might still adore that. I think I might need to
It's for
that
all
out.
ages. It is.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it for all ages. He wrote it for kids. I loved it as an adult. I mean, it is such a fun read.
I love the concept of little people and living in a department store, but then obviously they get uprooted. That sounds so interesting.
Yeah, they're bumbling and they're prone to malapropisms. And if you've read the Tiffany Aching novels, like The We Free Men, featuring the Nakmakfeegle little people, those are the gnomes in the Bromeliad are clear precursors to the Nakmakfeegle.
Neat.
They're-
That sounds so
they're really
cool.
fun.
And the other book also sounded really interesting too. I
Mhm.
actually visited that castle while I was in Europe over the summer. So yeah, that's really neat. Both sound fantastic, but I never hear people talk about that particular Pratchett trilogy. So yeah.
It's not
very interesting.
Discworld. It is
Right.
set in our world, not
Mhm.
Discworld. So it's one of the rare exceptions.
I see. Very cool choice. Nice. Wonderful hearing everybody's choice here. For me, I didn't reread a lot either, like Brian. I did actually reread a few books from my childhood favorite author, my first favorite author of all time, which is Lois Duncan. She was a YA mystery horror suspense writer from the late 70s and 80s and 90s. And I
I know what
reread.
you did last summer.
That's right. Yes, I read that. That's actually one of my least favorite of her books, oddly. But
Yeah.
yes, they did make a very famous movie out of that. But one of the ones I reread were Don't Look Behind You and Summer of Fear, which was the first of her books I read when I was like 9 years old. And then I think there was one other one, but yes, Down a Dark Hall. But my favorite reread was actually another book that I picked up, and it was one that I picked up when I was a teenager. And it's The Day Boy and the Night Girl by George MacDonald, which is this whimsical fairy tale it's practically a short story, but it's following there's this witch who's in a castle, and she is able to get these two mothers to steal two babies from these two mothers. One is a young boy, one's a young girl. And she basically keeps the young girl locked up in a tower where the girl can never see outside. So she's kept in the dark, and she has this lamp that looks like a moon. And so she's kept in the dark. And with the boy is raised to only see daytime. He only ever sees sunlight in daytime, and he never can see the nighttime. And eventually these two meet, and it's very much a fairy tale. Wonderful wordplay. But the thing I loved about it the most when I was 16 and why I wanted to reread it is because there was a description in there of the young girl who ends up going on the balcony of this tower in the middle of the night. and sees the night sky for the first time and sees the moon, the mother of all lamps, and light up the sky. And the way that George MacDonald captured that, the wonder of that, the sublime bliss, ecstasy of seeing the night sky for the first time from a teenage girl's perspective, it just really spoke to me as a teenage girl. And so rereading it, I loved it so much. I was charmed. I thought it was charming. It was fun, and it's just a very lighthearted classic read, classic literature. I would say it's along the vein of, let's see, like C.S. Lewis. I know he was very influential on C.S. Lewis. One of those, or what is it, William Morris. So he's around that time period. So it's an older work. But yeah, it was a great, delightful read that I just quite enjoyed. So that is my favorite reread for 2025, even though I didn't reread much. And
well, you did more than me.
well, a little bit. Yeah, I did do a little bit. Yeah. And most of those actually I did pick up on a whim. I'm going to go through here and try to catch up on some of the chat. Hello, everyone who showed up here. I'm just quickly going through this and see if anybody, gosh, we have a lot of friends here. So hello, Derry. Hello, Britton. The Time Machine. Oh, that would be cool to reread. I actually would really like to read The Invisible Man later in the year. Let's see some other ones here. I don't reread much, but I did read Terran Wanderer, yay, and read along. That's my next one in the Prydain series. I'm actually slowly reading that for the first time right now. Thanks to Bridger, because Bridger actually brought that up in a fantastic video about children's literature.
That was my gateway drug to fantasy, was that series.
That's so neat.
One of my earliest as well. I highly recommend it.
So good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I wish I had discovered it when I was in middle school. I mean, it's fun now, but it would have been so much more fun to read that as a child. Between Two Fires, I've heard about that book. I've been curious about it. I've heard various things, though. I heard one friend who's a medievalist who said that it wasn't very good, and then I've heard other people say it was amazing. So I'm just not sure, but mostly positive, I think. Neat. All right. Looking at some other answers here. Sorry, I'm a little slow going through here. Rereads are awesome, says Derry, read it before.
Well, if Derry's read it before, then that suggests she must do a lot of rereads.
She certainly does.
She certainly does. I think Derry should drop us a line and let us know how many times that you've read or reread The Realm of the Elderlings. It's quite a huge number. My only reread was A Christmas Carol, which I'm so embarrassed. I was going to read that this year. I still haven't read it. I know the story just because of pop culture, but I've actually never read.
I reread it in December as well. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's quick. It's really quick.
I probably should.
I think Dickens' novellas might be better than his novels, to be honest. Pound for pound. And I'm saying that with great love for Dickens and a big collection, but yeah, his shorter works I think are so much tighter.
Nice.
Thanks,
love
Mike.
for the sweatshirt. I've read Dungeon Crawler Carl 4 times and Dresden twice. That's impressive. And then I don't think I'm going to be able to say this title correctly. Vericonium was my reread.
Sure.
All right. And I always mix it up with other. Power of the Dog. Nice.
The Western.
Oh, my favorite reread.
It was a movie.
Yeah.
Lots of love for Power of the Dog, like I said recently. Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for sharing some of your answers. And I'm going to go on from here. Oh, I got to add here Derry's answer here. Farseer, Life Ships, and Tiny Man are 23 times each. Rain Wilds and Fits in the Full in the late teens. That is impressive. Mind-blowing. Yes. All right. Well, thanks, guys. And please, again, feel free to add your answers. We're going on now to our next question, which is favorite series started but not finished in 2025. I already know my answer for this. Brian, what's your answer for this? I think I already know what it is, but go ahead.
Everybody's going to know this if you watch the
Yes.
channel. So in 2025, I made the brilliant decision to every other month read a Malazan book and a Wars of Light and Shadow book. And don't recommend doing that to keep your brain space, somewhat sane. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but my favorite series that I started in 2025 started in January, a year ago this week. I started The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wirtz. This is book 1, Curse of the Mistwraith. I have since read the first 6 of them, and I start book 7 next month, which means I'll be finishing it up late, probably the 4th quarter of this year. But yeah, for sure. I had started Malazan, I want to say kind of midway through 2024. So that was completely out of the running for this particular category. This was easily hands down the simplest choice I had on this entire list today of the favorite series started, but not yet finished. Just incredible story, incredible characters, theme work, second to none, prose, top tier, no doubt about it.
Fantastic. Do you have a favorite book so far in the series?
I do. I have read through Peril's Gate, and so far my favorite happens to be Grand Conspiracy.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just really, really, really good stuff. And I also like the fact that the book that I just held up, The Curse of the Mistwraith, is its own arc, because there's 5 arcs within the 11 book series, and book 1 is it's just its own arc. So it's a good stopping place if you're going to go read something else right afterwards, like I did, and you don't really miss a whole lot when you pick it back up again for the second book. So easy answer there.
Great. All right. Well, I'm so glad you're enjoying it so much. And you're almost caught up to where I am, because my read along kind of came to a halt this last year, but hope to get it back going again this next year. All right. So Josh, what's your answer for this favorite series started?
So mine is the Gentleman Bastards sequence. Since it works better on this side. I read January of last year. I read The Lies of Locke Lamora. Loved it. Thought, well, I'll probably read all 3 of them this year, and I never went back to it. But I do have the second book, Red Seas Under Red Skies, is literally, I'm going to read that next week. I'm going to start that one next week. So I will be continuing this series, but I kind of suspected that this was going to be a book for me, because I do love friendships and literature when they're written well, and I did really love Locke and John, and the humor worked for me, the plotting, and it was just a really fun book. And I honestly have no idea why I didn't pick up the second book last year, but I didn't. But it's up for next week. So after I finish the book I'm going to be starting today, that's the one after it. So I will be continuing, and I'll likely be caught up. And I hear he's putting out a novella or something soon. So I guess my timing's pretty good, at least for the release of that one.
And those are books that you can space out quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bridger, have you read The Gentleman Bastards?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love the first 2 books. I'm sort of lukewarm on the third.
Yeah. And you too, Brian, right?
I'm going to agree with Bridger on that. First 2 were great. I love nautical fantasy, so the second book for me was just chef's kiss in terms of setting. Third book kind of meandered a little bit for me. I have heard that the 4th book is also on the way, but the novella that Josh is talking about, it sounds like the setting is very far away from where we last left off in book 3. So the novella really describes their journey from the location of book 3 to where they're going to start in book 4.
Oh, interesting. I love all 3 books, but my favorite by far is book 2, Red Seas Under Red Skies, because of the nautical setting. But also I felt like I had very high expectations about the friendship between Locke and Jean for book 1, based on how much I'd heard people talk about it. And I thought it was there. But for me, I think, especially based on everything that happens in book 1, that friendship deepens significantly in book 2. So that it's a bit of a wild, over the top thing. I think you have to be in for that, like when you read Gentleman Bastards. But I'm very excited to hear your thoughts about the rest of the series or the other 2 books. So very cool. What about you, Bridger?
I think I only started 3 series last year. And so everything I'm doing from memory because I don't actually track all of my reading throughout the year. So I don't maintain a spreadsheet of everything that I've done. But I think I can remember everything I read. And the 3 that I started, one is an Australian historical fiction called The Potato Factory by Bryce Courtney, which is like a mashup of Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist and the classic Australian historical fiction epic Sarah Dane that was written in the mid 1950s or so. And it's kind of a take the 2 plots and mash them together, and it's set on Van Diemen's Land, or Tasmania, which was a prison colony back in the early 19th century. Really interesting read. Not my favorite one of the 3. The second one is the Coughlin trilogy from Dennis Lehane. So I did read The Given Day, which was one that was on my list from last year that I wanted to get to in 2025. I did get to it. Very glad I got to it. But I've only finished the first book in that trilogy. Quite enjoyed it. But my favorite is a novel from 1933, which is much more lighthearted than those other 2, because those other 2 are really about the seamier underbelly of society in many respects. There are a lot of bad things that happen in those first 2 series. And this one is by Angela Thirkell, which is her Barsetshire series. The first novel is High Rising. And this is sort of relatively insubstantial comedy, drama, romantic elements, comedy of manners, set at that time period. So set, around the 1920s, 1930s in Barsetshire, which is a fictitious county in England. It's, a nice, pleasant area. It's about the landed gentry and just various mishaps and misadventures and miscommunications and rivalries that take place within this small community in rural England. It's light. This is not a really substantial story, but it's fun. I just had a lot of fun reading it. There are quite a few books in the series, but they're all very short. So I'm going to try and work my way through them over the next couple of years. And so if you like that type of story, if you like P.G. Wodehouse, this isn't quite as comical as Wodehouse, but it definitely has some very subtle humor in it. And it's sort of autobiographical because Angela Thirkell, the main character in this novel, High Rising, is herself a writer. She writes novels, and she writes novels that she considers to be good, bad novels. So they're basically bestsellers, but she doesn't really consider them to be literature. And Thirkell herself kind of felt the same way. So there's an element of putting herself in the story that's kind of fun. And I would say this is not a bad novel. Is it a substantial novel? Not really. Is it fun? Yes, I do think it's fun.
What genre is that again? That one?
It's literary fiction.
Oh, okay.
It's just straight literary fiction with a little bit of romance, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of just a blend of all of the above.
Oh, okay. That's neat. Was that for any kind of video project? Because I know that you usually read a lot for.
It is. So I'm going to be doing a project later this year on sort of the comic fiction of the early 20th century. And so she's one of the authors that I wanted to focus on.
Neat. Oh, that sounds really interesting. Yeah. All right. So for me, for favorite series, started, not finished in 2025, I'm going to give 2 answers to this. One will be obvious for people who watch my channel, and that's going to be the Tawny Man trilogy by Robin Hobb. Huge fan of this book because I have not been able to stop talking about it in almost every video recently. But another one that I started this last year is Book of the New Sun. And so I am really excited to finish this. I did not finish it. It was the plan to finish it, but did not happen. So hoping to finish that actually this month. I'm in book 4 and halfway through book 4 right now, reading this with Nerd Level Rising. So yeah, those would be my answers to that. But probably Tiny Man would have to be my answer for that so far after just one book in. And I don't think I'm trying to think if I started any other series this last year. And I don't think I did. Oh, I did. No, that's true. I did. I started a couple of other series, but they are not favorites. So that's going to be reserved for another answer. Okay, so let's go into the chat now. I'm going to be skipping around a little bit. So again, apologize about that. Let's see. I just want to highlight this really quickly because I was curious. Medieval is not liking Between Two Fires is like Alan hating Boudica. Too close to the real history. Could be the case, yeah. All right. And Wars of Light, I'm going to guess that's Wars of Light and Shadow. Yeah, for me too. Nice, Mike. Good to hear that. Mine is The Expanse. Baslag, oh my goodness. Yes, Gormenghast. And then I started Dagger and Coin. Witchwood Crown, Book of the Year. Brian's definition of brilliant decision equals complete madness and brain meltdown. Okay. And then I still haven't finished Black Company and Sun Eater. All right. Yeah. So many series going on that people are talking about right now. City Watch, Alchemy War, The Bone Raiders. Let's see, second book isn't out yet. That makes sense. I started Malazan and found it frustrating. You wouldn't be the first. Yes. Let's see what else. The Frida Klein mystery series. I've not heard of that, but I just don't know as much about mystery series. So the Matthew Corbett by Robert McCammon. I have not read that. I mean, I've only read one Robert McCammon book, but he is quite popular. I know that. Century Trilogy by Ken Follett and Bladeborn Saga. Okay. I've been hearing about this book. Have you all heard of Mythago Wood? Yes?
Yeah.
Do you like it, Bridger?
I do. And I mean, I have somewhat mixed feelings about it. It's a good read. I mean, I highly recommend it, but it's definitely not going to be for everyone. It gets a little weird in places because of how it presents these archetypal characters from both history and myth and kind of blends them in a way that's it's very innovative. But the story is not exactly linear, which might frustrate some readers. But I think it's absolutely worth the read. It's kind of weird, kind of trippy. And there's a sequel to it, which I have not read, which I've been trying to get to for the past couple of years, which is called Lavendus. And I have heard from reliable sources that one's even better. So I really do want to get to the second book.
Okay, yeah. I just heard a couple of people talking about this in the Fireside Discord recently, and the way they were describing it, a couple of people said it was their favorite book of the year. And the way they were describing it, I can't remember the exact descriptions they said, but it sounded phenomenal. And so I was thinking, why haven't I heard of this book before? But obviously a lot of people have. I guess it's probably maybe a backlisted title, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, it was published somewhere around 1980 or thereabouts, early 80s. So it's fallen off the radar of a lot of people today, I think.
Well, I think there's a good chance I'd like it then, because something I noticed about my top 10 favorite books of the year is I didn't put publication dates, but I noticed that the majority of books I loved in 2025 were written around the time of 1980, between 1980 and 1984, it seemed. For some reason, that was the trend for me. I don't know what it was about that time period, but I seem to like it a lot. Fantastic. Oh, yay. Hi, Story 2. We're dropping in to ensure that Josh is talking. Winslow and Lahane to a sufficient degree. He's not the only one. Bridger also mentioned Lahane. And Happy New Year, all. Yay, thank you so much. All right, we're going to go on from here. Thank you, everybody who's chiming into the chat. And I apologize that I am a little bit behind here. But we're going to go ahead and go on to the next one, which is favorite series finished in 2025. I have an easy answer for that. But Brian, go ahead.
Well, I may steal Josh's thunder ahead of time. I'm going to say there's a 50-50 chance that he selects the same one. I'm going to hold up a hardcover because it's a 4-book series, and I only own book 3, which is good because it happens to be my favorite one. It's the Autumn War series, of course, is the Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. Easily. Well, first of all, I mean, like I said, I'm reading Malazan and Wars of Light and Shadow. Those were not finishable. This one was, and they're just so short, but talk about packing a punch in a limited page count and word count. I had no idea what to expect. I've had, since, I started the channel a couple of years ago, everybody's been telling me that they thought I would really resonate with the kind of books that Daniel Abraham writes solo apart from The Expanse. And they weren't kidding at all. Absolutely loved it. Loved every entry in the series. This happens to be my favorite, but there's not a bad book of the 4. Easily, quick answer, Long Price Quartet.
It's such a great series. I love that series too. Yes. Good answer.
Thanks.
Yeah. And that's also an easy one to start and knock out in a single year too. So yeah, fantastic. And then Josh, what's your answer to this? Is it the same?
Maybe. I will say, Brian, keep that Autumn War handy because it might be the answer to a future one. So remember, like, half of what I say here might be lies because some of my choices are my first choice, some of my second choice, because I haven't done the Red Fury Book Award. So the series that I'm going to say right now is my favorite finished series in 2025 is the Cartel Trilogy by Don Winslow. So Power of the Dog, the Cartel, the Border, all 3 books of these were incredible. I already talked about Power of the Dog. It's probably the best of the 3, but they just kind of continue the story. And then the Border is very, very timely when it was written. And it's just incredible storytelling beginning to end, all 3 books. I was really, each time I finished one of these books, I just felt like I was in awe of what Winslow was able to accomplish because so many aspects of the story just felt like I was reading nonfiction. And it was crime fiction just because it was just so realistic. But yeah, that may or may not be my favorite series finish. The other one may or may not be the one that Brian talked about, but you can find out Red Fury Book Awards. Which one of those 2 is my favorite series for 2025?
Very nice. Very nice. And Bridger, what's your answer?
First, I will completely agree with you on Long Price Quartet. If I were ever to make a top 10 fantasy series video, that would probably be on that list. So I really think highly of that. But as far as series that I finished in 2025, I didn't finish very many series, but the ones I did, I'm really happy I did. The kind of the runner-up is the Cicero trilogy by Robert Harris, which is historical fiction about very famous lawyer, orator, rival of Julius Caesar and thorn in the side of Mark Antony and Octavian Augustus. This is such a fascinating read and highly recommend it for historical fiction lovers, particularly if you like ancient Rome. But my top one is I wasn't quite sure how to define this because in some respects, I finished a much larger series by this author, but technically it's not a series. It's really just a whole bunch of books that were part of a category that she wrote in and essentially defined. But then she did have a tetralogy that really is a series within that larger grouping, and that's by Georgette Heyer. So I finished reading all of her Georgian romances and all of her Regency romances, and she's got dozens of them. I finally finished all of them. Oh. But within that, there's this tetralogy, which is the Alistair Audley tetralogy, which starts with a novel called These Old Shades, and follows that up with Devil's Cub, Regency Buck, and An Infamous Army. And these were all written back in the 1920s and 30s. And two of them are from the Georgian period. So this would have been in the late 1700s. And then the latter two are set in the early 1800s in the Regency period. And these are Jane Austen-like romantic comedies. And they are fun. The fourth book is actually a hybrid, and it's my least favorite of the four, although I do like it. But An Infamous Army is kind of a mashup of Jane Austen and military fiction. So it's really telling almost two different stories and then sort of forces them together because it's about the Battle of Waterloo and Napoleon's defeat there. And so you have this whole plot line of these romantic entanglements and miscommunications and some of the typical things you would find in a romantic comedy. And then at the same time, a few miles away, the Battle of Waterloo is taking place. And Heyer did such a good job of writing the battle scenes and describing the layout of the troops and their movements and how the battle progressed, that the British military incorporated this novel into its curriculum for officer training school for decades, because it was at the time and for a long time the most accurate portrayal of that battle, because she really did her homework. Now, as a novel, it's kind of schizophrenic because it's trying to blend together these two different stories, but it's still fun. I'm particularly partial to the first three novels, especially the first two in the tetralogy, and am going to be featuring all of them, the full range of Georgian and Regency romances in an upcoming video where I'm going to do just a complete retrospective of Heyer's works.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So interesting. I'm really looking forward to that video project, by the way. All right. Well, have either of you, I'm guessing that none of us have read that or any of those books, right?
No, but I'm glad to know that the word is tetralogy and not quadrilogy, because I've been using quadrilogy for a couple of years now.
Or you could call it a quartet, like Daniel Abraham.
Exactly. Quadrilogy it rolls off the tongue, but cool.
I kind of like quartet because it makes me think of music, but tetralogy, I always have to work on that one too. Oh, look at that. Yay, we have a fan here in the chat. Marianne loves, I guess, Georgette here. Fantastic.
Well, so do I. She is a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see where I can start here. Jerry says here, well, I need to know who Bridger considers a trustworthy source for book facts. And then Britton here, I don't think I finished a series. Long Price Quartet, yes. The Empire of the Wolf trilogy by Richard Swan. Okay, I've not read that. Do comics count? I don't see why not. City Watch for me. This makes me feel so guilty because I've just been so stagnant on this series. I read the first two books, and I think I read the Feet of Clay like a few years ago now. And I keep saying I'm going to get to the next book, and I don't know what's wrong with me. Paper Girls. I don't know of that book by Brian K. Vaughan. You know that?
I think it's a comic.
That's a comic book. Okay, got it. Dancers at the End of Time. All right. Now I have also, gosh, this is making me feel bad because I have also not gone on with my Elric saga editions. I stopped after the 6th story and still need to continue. But
Stop before the two best of those omnibus.
I'm so glad they get better because
you have the Bane of the Black Sword up next, which is fantastic, and then Stormbringer. I think those are the two best of the first 8 in those, because we have those same omnibus editions.
yes. I'm so glad to hear it gets better because I don't know what it was about the last one. I found it just a bit repetitive and just didn't I didn't sweep me away like previous ones did. Wars of Light and Shadow. Oh, interesting. Time travel story since 12 Monkeys. Isn't that a movie? I seem to remember a 12 Monkeys movie. No, from back in the day. The only series I finished was the Christoph Vampire trilogy. Yep, that could be an answer there. Matt says here that he doesn't think he finished a series, but he's caught up on Emma Leon, though, or Lion, probably how you pronounce that. Saga of the Forgotten Warrior. Cool. And Josh is a cultured intellectual. Lots of Empire of the Vampire. I have not read any of those books, but I'm curious. I'm curious to try the first one. I know the last one is a bit divisive, is what I hear. So, Aspect Emperor. Yes, so good. Cicero Bridger is also a cultured intellectual. This is Carlos. Hey, Carlos. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go on from here into our next question. Yes, I'm definitely going to try to move on with Elric, and not going forward in the city watch means you need to jump across to the witches. You know what? I do have equal rights, and I have thought about just jumping into the witches, to be honest, even though I do want to continue with city watch. Thank you. Oh, maybe not, but I like to challenge myself sometimes. I like to prove myself wrong about certain things. All right. Favorite author discovered in 2025. Brian, take it away.
I am so late to the party with this one, but I know this is going to make Chad happy. It's going to make the guy below me extremely happy, and probably Bridger too. Dennis Lehane. Never read Dennis Lehane before. Love The Wire. I just, for whatever reason, the genre just hasn't called to me as much as some of the epic fantasy and science fiction that does. But I just felt like there's so much buzz about Dennis Lehane, and there really has been for decades, that I felt like in some regard I was missing the boat with this guy. And it took like a paragraph to realize this guy knows how to write. I mean, forget about the genre. I think he could really write in any genre, creative, descriptive. He kind of, this particular book was interesting because I have nothing in common with any of the characters, yet when they were at a particular sports event, I felt what it was like when their team lost. And you go to a sporting event thinking that everything is great and you're so excited, and then you're just kind of like hanging your head on the way out of the stadium because everything went south. And I just felt like the guy gets the human experience better than most authors that I've ever read. First Dennis Lehane book, absolutely not the last. I'm going to have plenty of time to catch up on his catalog up in the next year and beyond. So that's going to be my answer for new author.
All right, and fine. That's exciting. I need to give Dennis Lehane another chance. I notoriously read his worst book this year, and it was very disappointing. But I could tell that I could recognize that he was a brilliant writer. Like the writing itself, I could admire it on a sentence by sentence level. It's just everything else about how the narrative tried to function just flopped miserably.
I really think that book that his editor came in halfway and was like, no, you need to change it to this because it just changed. And it was like it was such a jumbled mess. Anyway, we're talking about Since I Fell, by the way.
Yes.
The only book of his I do not recommend anybody.
Yeah. It felt like it changed the direction 3 different times and didn't know what it wanted to do. So sadly, but like I said, there were still parts of his writing style where I could see the potential. I could see there's something there about this writer. And so I totally believe you, Brian. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you had a great time. I know, wasn't that a Quill Illuminati?
It is. Yeah. I selected it almost with Josh's help because I asked him a little bit where to start with Dennis Lehane, and I had a couple of options, and he said, "No, Mystic Rivers, is solid, and it's the one that I've heard the most about." So,
Mhm.
there's plenty of times that we hear about authors and they've got this wide catalog, and you almost don't want to read the big one. You grab something else, almost like what you had done with him.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what? I've heard nothing but, this is a 5-star across the board for everybody. Let's just start there. And yeah, super glad that I did. Really,
That's
really good stuff.
amazing.
Yeah. And luckily, and shockingly, even Philip enjoyed the book. And that particular book is a highly depressing book. I mean, nothing good happens in Mystic River at all. It's one misery after the next. But the quality of the writing is just so good. Just, yeah, phenomenal. Can't wait to read more.
Fabulous. So glad to hear that that was such a huge win for you and so many. And I feel like it's neat just to see, especially in the fantasy corner of BookTube, just seeing other authors from other genres getting highlighted. So I think that's a neat thing to see. All right, Josh, what's your choice for this?
So I don't have a model because the three people on screen saw this. I was hurriedly pulling things off of the shelf, and this author is in a different room. So that's Daniel Abraham is my favorite new author that I read for the first time in 2025. I was just blown away with just about everything he did, that he was able in the Long Price Quartet to tell such a big, vast story with just detailed world building in like 1,200 pages, which is the whole series, which is like a page and a half or a book and a half of like most epic fantasy series. And he does it better there. But his characterization, I kept saying, it was like Hobb level characterization. I think he did such a great job with showing you characters at different stages of their lives. And I don't know many authors that you've done that I've seen that in this series, in this genre, done just so well, because you get to see mainly two characters at 4 different points of their lives, and you see how everything that happened their entire lives kind of just builds up to and influences and changes who they are. And the level of characterization is so good because they felt like real people, where sometimes you love them, sometimes they frustrate you, sometimes you're happy for them, sometimes you want to strangle them. I mean, they just felt like human beings and not character on a page. So the series as a whole is fantastic, but Daniel Abraham, just based on those 4 books, he's definitely an author that I'll be reading more of, without a doubt.
I so agree with that. I really love the way that the characters aged so much over the course of that series, but they still felt like they had a thread of consistency from beginning to end, and yet they felt believable for their age. Like, I remember one character just seeming to get a bit more eccentric with age, and it happened in such a believable way. And also the way that relationships, the way that romantic chemistry worked in older age. I thought that that was handled very sensitively as a female reader personally. So liked how I like that choice. And I agree with you. I feel like people who love Hobb might enjoy that series. That's always been my instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, Bridger, what's your choice for favorite author discovered in 2025?
I had 2 finalists, one of whom I've already mentioned, and that was Angela Thirkell, who wrote the Barsetshire series. And I forgot to mention that Barsetshire, it's a fictitious county. She didn't create the county. It was actually created by Anthony Trollope for his series of novels back in the 19th century, the Barsetshire novels that included Barchester Towers, Dr. Thorne, The Warden. I mean, you had one of his best known series. She wrote her own Barsetshire novels as a direct homage to Trollope. So just another little piece of trivia. But she's not going to be my favorite. She was my number 2. My favorite is a spy fiction author, who is mostly forgotten today. Her name is Helen McInnes. This was her first novel, called Above Suspicion. I read this one and her second one, which is Assignment in Brittany. She wrote both of these in the early 1940s. She continued to write another 21 novels or so over the next 40 years. Most of them are about espionage or international intrigue in some way. And in fact, at one point in her career, she was named, or given the nickname, the Queen of Spy Fiction, because really most spy fiction has been written by men.
Yeah.
And she's very good. I had never read her before until this past year. And it's remarkable how sophisticated her plots are and how realistic the settings are that she describes. And it turns out that she had some help. Not that she needed help in writing, but her husband worked for British intelligence, MI6, during World War II. And so she was able to build into her plots and just into the tradecraft and other things that take place in her novels, things that are actually real and very timely at the time. I mean, in 1941, her first novel is set in 1939 and is very much about the rise of Nazism in Germany and other parts of Europe, which at the time was extremely timely. There really hadn't been much written at that point, and it was so timely, Hollywood turned it into a movie within 6 months, or maybe actually a little longer, probably within a year. And in fact, both of these novels were adapted by Hollywood that same year. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of her books, and I'm disappointed that it took me so long to get to her, because she's really a remarkable writer. Again, her name is Helen McInnes.
Helen McInnes. Yes. Thank you for repeating it too.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting. And I obviously don't know much about this genre, the spy fiction genre in general. Like, I'm not read in that genre at all, but it is neat to hear about her. And I'm so delighted to hear that that was like such a highlight for you, such a great discovery for you in 2025. Neat. That's so neat.
She was a bestseller for decades. It's just a shame that she's not really remembered anymore.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, my answer to this, I have several answers for this. I'm probably gonna just
Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No. Yeah. I'm probably going to go through a little bit of a list here, but I think, oh goodness, this is hard. I think I'm going to have to give it to Bejeweled. Lois McMaster Bejeweled. I read The Curse of Chalian this last year, which I just adored. I love that book so much. And I know I repetitively say K fans, I think, should read it, because there's something about it. Like, I think it most for me felt aligned with Lines of Albasan, but I think it also has some Spanish history that is influenced in the story. But then also I read a couple of the Penrick novellas, which I thought were charming, great palate cleansers. I really like Bejeweled's sense of humor. It's not a humor that always makes me laugh out loud. It's more like it makes me kind of chuckle inward, but I loved her storytelling this last year, and I really look forward to reading more of her books. I know that a lot of friends here in this corner have been talking about the Vorkosigan saga. Eventually I'll get there, but I think I'm going to just mostly focus on her fantasy for right now. But she was a fabulous new discovery for me this last year. Another one, oh goodness, there are so many. I'm going to go with KJ Parker. Was a new discovery for me. And I put this off. I know my friend Alan from Library of Alexandria has been reading everything from him and getting a lot of people around him to read a lot of KJ Parker as well. But I read Purple and Black this last year. It's only 99 pages. It is fabulous. It is so well written. It was not what I expected. It pulled me out of a major reading slump. I would widely recommend that, actually. I would widely recommend Purple and Black. I also read The Devil You Know by him, which is, I would say, a Faustian tale where a guy makes a deal with an agent of the devil to have extended life and vitality and to be able to do anything he wants, of course, in return for eternal damnation in hell. And it's really good. It's so intelligent. I know his characters are just very, very intelligent and shown on the page intelligent. So that one was fabulous too. Also very short. But another one I want to quickly mention, I mean, there are a couple more I'll quickly mention. Shirley Jackson was a new discovery for me this last year. And I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by her, which is not a terribly, I would say it's maybe novella length. And it made me realize that I think there are certain, it's a type of horror that I really enjoyed. I've never been much of a horror reader before, but I started to find myself loving her style of horror. Bridger probably has the best terminology to describe that kind of horror, but it's more of like, I guess, a drier kind of horror. It's not necessarily gory, but it is very sinister and it is very macabre. And I really enjoyed the absurdity behind it. There was like a twisted, dark absurdity in the storytelling that I thoroughly enjoyed. And then I also picked up her short story collection, The Lottery and Other Stories. Read The Lottery. I'm not the same after that. I had my husband read it, and he also had a moment of like, whoa, what did I read? And then I read a few other stories in that collection and just had such a great time with their storytelling because again, it's not like body horror type of horror. It's not in your face gory, but she does capture this sinister aspect of our humanity, but displayed in what feels like a normalized setting or a normalized circumstances that makes it all the more unsettling. And so that was a fabulous discovery for me as well. And then I'll lastly just quickly say Gene Wolfe, because I started Book of the New Sun, and I think when it was mostly when I read book 3, The Sword of the Lictor, when a lot of what Gene Wolfe was doing on the page started to really click for me. And I certainly don't understand everything going on in that series. But he writes in, I can't put my finger on it. I'm trying to identify what it is about Gene Wolfe's writing that is so unique, because it is extraordinary. His writing is extraordinary. He's able to depict atmosphere and settings in a way that is vivid, is unusual, and it makes me feel somewhat grounded in the narrative. And then he'll suddenly do something that is quite eccentric and off kilter and disjointed with what he's presenting and the way he's presenting it. And it breaks my brain a little bit the way he does it, but it's just so different. It's so unusual. Again, I'm failing to find a way to articulate what it is that he does that makes it so different. That's so interesting. But I truly find it interesting. And of course, all the different concepts he weaves into his storytelling. But there is something about his voice as a writer that is unlike anything I've ever read before. So that's my that's a little bit of a list there. But yes, I felt like I had many great new discoveries this last year.
Excellent.
Yay. All right, I'll go ahead and go into the chat here for a minute. Oh goodness. The chat got ahead of me. Let's see, where do we leave off here? I guess I'll just start here. I hope this is for the right answer, so forgive me if I'm showing older answers here. Andrew Giver with Ironbound, Roman-inspired progression fantasy. So much fun. Very cool. Robin Hobb, nice. Percival Everett, that was an author I meant to get to this last year, and I never did, but I've heard fabulous things. Mervyn Peake, nice. Stephen Erickson, nice. And then Alexander Dumas, yes, nice. Oh, yes. Do need to try. I will be trying another Lehane book at some point, and I have been curious about Small Mercies. I have heard fabulous things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mervyn Peake, Stephen Donaldson, China Miéville, Philip K. Dick, Umberto Eco, yes. Oh, yes. And I also read Name of the Rose this last year, and that was a stellar book. Loved it. Christopher Buehlman. All right. Ronald Malfi for me. Oh, yay. We both share Shirley Jackson. Fantastic. Kazuo Ishiguro is also brilliant. Yes, for sure. Murakami. Some great choices here. Guy Gabriel Kay and Laura Purcell. All right. Some great answers here. John Le Carre and Ian Fleming. All right. And then from here, oh, yay. I'm so glad to see some more of the Shirley Jackson love. Great. All right. So let's go ahead and go on to the next answer. Did anybody want to respond to any of that? I don't know.
No, they're all
anybody-
good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Going on from here is favorite new character of the year. Brian.
This is a close one. I spent, as I mentioned, and will continue to mention, I spent most of the year in Malazan and the Wars of Light and Shadow. So the runner-up on this one would be T-Hole, who makes his first appearance in Midnight Tides. The only reason I think he's probably not the top one is because it's limited page count over the entirety of the series. So for me, my favorite character, we're going right back to this one. Brunette right here on the cover, Arathon, our main protagonist of the entire series, the master of shadow himself. There are things about him, and I don't know what it is. And for some reason, they're very, very different stories, but some of the things that he does reminds me of Fitz from the Robin Hobb realm of the Elder Ring stuff, just because he is doing things that he feels are the right things to do in the moment. But as a reader, we're screaming at him, what are you doing? You should not be doing this. This is not going to end well for you or anybody around you. Yet that's what he needs to do. I love the fact that he is a bard. He's a musician. He is a wizard / magician only because of his birthright and because of the training that he got when he was young. He didn't set out to go do that in the first place. And the selflessness that he has throughout the entire series is just striking. His character depth continues to grow. As I mentioned, I just finished Peril's Gate is where I'm at right now. And if you know anything about that book, the second half is almost entirely the Arathon character. And we're just finding out not only about him, but about what's left in the wake of his actions or his inactions. And he's just as central of a character to a big series that has a big cast as I've ever seen. So I've read Wheel of Time and I've read Realm of the Elderlings and all the other big ones that we've all talked about. But this one is a big one, but it has a much tighter cast. So we get a lot more page time with our main protagonist. And I'm going with Arathon Spallin for my favorite new character of the year.
Yes. Great choice. Excellent. All right. So, Josh, what's your favorite?
So I chose a pair of characters because they're from Malazan, and Malazan characters are often paired together. And Brian just talked about one of them. I'm picking Tejo and Bug.
Yes.
From Night Tides. And then I just finished I actually finished on Monday, Reaper's Gale. So they come back into that book as well. And page count is small, but there's such memorable characters. In this book, this is my favorite through 7 books in Malazan. This is my favorite of the 7 so far. And they were as many really intriguing and great characters as there were in this book. They were standouts for me. And part of it is that they gave Erickson the opportunity to show how well he can write humor. But it was humor with some heart. When you see kind of the end of Midnight Tides, what their relationship is like, it really made everything kind of feel different. And then the way it went forward was not what you would expect. And I just loved those characters. So Tejo and Bug for me are my favorite characters that I discovered in 2025.
Oh, so happy with that, with the Tejo and Bug and Midnight Tides love. I know that Brian also loves Midnight Tides. That might be, I always struggle when it comes to ranking Malazan, but I think that might be my second favorite book in the series after The Crippled God. I think that might be my second favorite. It's hard because, but yes, I think that those characters, the relationship, I love what you said, Josh, about humor and heart. That's so well said. Yeah. All right, Bridger, what is your favorite new character of the year?
Well, between this question and the next one, some of you might see a pattern or a theme, and it really isn't intentional. I sort of compiled these and realized, oh, wait, they have something in common here. And the common thing that ties them all together is they're young girls. So don't read too much into
Nice.
that, please. Please don't read too much into that. But they all have very different personalities. You know, the tone in which they're written, the setting, the books, very different. So the honorable mentions are the narrator from I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, which I read way back last January and loved it. The second one is the narrator named Candy in this novel from 1984 called Emergence by David Palmer. Technically, this is not a new character for me because I actually did read this back in 1984, but I haven't read it since, and I'd basically forgotten her. So I'm glad I reread it early last year. And this is a post-apocalyptic novel, Hugo or Nebula nominated. Highly recommend it. It's written in a journal form where she's basically keeping a journal. She's about 12 years old, and she is manic. She's charming. She's very honest, and her writing style is a shorthand that you really sort of have to get used to because it's not just pure, grammatical English. It's all of this little shorthand that she has created herself. And she's on a journey trying to find more survivors of this apocalypse that has happened. It is such a fun novel. It's not perfect. It sort of has a split personality about 2/3 of the way through it. But her voice in this novel is just so much fun. I loved reading her journal entries and just her personality. The ones that I would pick, though, and I actually couldn't pick, are 3 characters from Georgette Heyer, 3 of her novels. 2 of them are young ingenues who are just now coming onto the social scene in England. They've had their coming out, their debut. And one of them is Sophie from The Grand Sophie. The other is Arabella from the novel Arabella. And these are very strong, no-nonsense heroines. They're sort of Elizabeth Bennet-like, if you think of Pride and Prejudice. They have some of those same qualities, but they're unique. They're different. And I love what Heyer does with them and how real these characters felt, even when placed in some situations that are not all that. I wouldn't say they weren't realistic. They might have been realistic, but some of them are a little on the preposterous side, but that makes it all the more fun. But how the characters are written and how they deal with those situations, I thought was just so well done. And I would have really liked these characters if I had ever met them. So they're my 2 top choices. I just couldn't pick between them because they're similar and yet distinct, and I like them both.
Wow.
Neat.
Fantastic. Oh, I loved hearing those choices. And of course, I also read I Who Have Never Known Men this last year and adored it. So love that nameless. I think that the nameless narrator certainly has some interesting qualities, and it's just such an intriguing character for sure. I guess for me, I'm going to go with Beaver Dream, Abner Marsh, and Joshua York, also a pair. And also, I don't want to say too much. I don't feel like I could say much without spoiling this. But Abner Marsh is a steamboat captain. He is described as 6 foot tall, 300 pounds. He has warts on his face covered up by his beard. He's kind of this gruff man. He loves to eat. He says formidable over and over again throughout the book. I just love the humor so much in this book. I laughed out loud so many times. But he's also paired together. He goes into partnership with an aristocratic man, Joshua York, who is very pale and mysterious and wants to keep his privacy. And I just adored their friendship. As I've said before in my top 10 books of the year video, this might have been like the most fun I had reading a book this last year. I had fun with this. I couldn't put it down, but it was because of the friendship between these two characters that I adored it. I adored those characters. Of course, we all know George R. R. Martin writes great characters, but and in some ways, Abner Marsh reminded me a little bit of Robert Baratheon, just a little bit, but it was so much fun. So yes, I think those two characters specifically paired. It's again humor and heart, kind of like what Josh was saying with Tahol and Bug. I have to go with that. I have to go with them, even though there were so many excellent characters I encountered in 2025. So, yay.
Nice.
Okay. Oh, yay. I'm already seeing that Fever Dream is so good. I'm so glad that other people love it. I know the average rating on Goodreads is quite low for whatever weird reason, but
It's the same for Long Price Quartet.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going backwards this year, and it's because I obviously had the banners up, and now that I'm at the chat, it's just taking me all the way to where we are at. So I'm just going to go backwards a little bit. Sorry, y'all. I have never known my what? I didn't know that. It was your book of the year. That's so neat. Oh, I'm so thrilled to hear that, Derry. Do you know what my book of the year is? If you haven't, I won't spoil it for anybody, but check out the top 10.
Jerry will be very happy.
Yeah. You will be very happy, Derry. Okay, excellent. Yeah, for whatever reason, my tastes align with Josh like 90% of the time, so it was easy to say yes when he made it.
Yeah,
one of the top.
his favorite characters are from Lines of Al Rasan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Let's see. Oh, I see here. Going back up here. Yes, Amar, Ibn Kairan, and Rodrigo Belmonte. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, Silver. Yes. Oh my goodness. That's a good choice. Great choice, in my opinion. And then Bornu Blatt from No Life Forsaken, another fantastic character. So I love your answers. Love them. Let's see. I'm just scrolling up to see some other answers here. See if let's see. Jenny from, I don't know what IDW's Ninja Turtles comics. Okay. Nice. And then Hunter from Cold Silver for Souls. That's Tori Tekken's book.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Very cool. Karsa Orlong, Witness, Pennywise. Okay, very cool. Nice to hear everybody's answers to this. Again, sorry if I missed anybody's answer here. Captain Kenneth. All right, cool. All right, let's go on to the next question. And this is going to be hard to choose just one for me here too, but biggest surprise of the year. Brian, take it away.
Okay. Once again, I'm sticking with the keeping the guy below me on screen. Just elated and loving being here today because I'm going with this one. This is Michael Connelly's The Last Coyote. This is book 4 in the Harry Bosch series. I had not read any Michael Connelly. I had not read any, obviously, Harry Bosch. And again, this was a book club thing that I wanted to try Connelly because my entire life I've spent in bookstores and in airports, and everywhere you go, you see this dude's books all over the place. And I may not have ever touched this if not for Red Fury Books, YouTube channel, Josh's channel, because I just didn't know that I would align with a reader that was into this kind of thing. I'd never seen the Bosch TV show on Amazon Prime, didn't know what it was about, knew the guy was an LA police detective, and this was kind of like a procedural crime drama. And I just wanted to get, honestly, I just finished Toll the Hounds, and it's like a treatise on grief for 400,000 words. And I needed something that was going to be a bit more of a page turner. And I read The Last Coyote in 2 sittings. And it's not the longest book in the world, but it's still 400 pages or so. And I just couldn't believe how fast it read. I couldn't believe how invested immediately in the Harry Bosch character that I became. The mystery was very interesting, but for me, it wasn't even the real highlight of the book. It's what's this character going through while he's essentially on leave from his job for striking a superior officer. So easily, because I had no expectations going in, other than this is going to be somebody that a good friend of mine recommends. Good friend of mine's read dozens of the guy's books. Let's see what I think of it. Hugest surprise for sure. The Last Coyote, Michael Connelly, hands down.
Nice. That's so exciting. I feel like I wonder if that's one of the authors I saw my dad reading a lot growing up, but you're right, it is an author you see a lot in airports, but that's cool. I especially love what you were saying about striking his was that his officer or his
His superior at
superior?
the police at the police department. So we start this book. He's essentially in mandated therapy because that's what they do. They put you on leave and then they make you go talk to a therapist about why you did what you did.
Mhm.
And he decides during his off time he's going to solve a cold case, and that's what this story is all about. And just again, super high quality writing. It reminded me of Dennis Lehane in a way that he doesn't use a whole lot of words to create an ambiance in your mind, and the words that he uses are highly accessible. It's not Jenny Wirtz prose, it's not Robin Hobb prose, it's not Erickson prose. It's pretty straightforward. I think that's probably why I was able to read it in 2 sittings, because it's just, everyday language, but highly compelling story, total page turner. Absolutely.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. And Josh, what about you?
Hey, this is cool because I recommended Brian's biggest surprise of the year, and Joanna, I'm pointing the wrong way. Joanna, you recommended my favorite biggest surprise this year. When I had the chat with you and Jimmy, both of you raved about this book called Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. I don't have one to hold up because, well, I started on audiobook, but then I got so into it that I didn't want to stop reading it. So then I got it on Kindle, and I was kind of going back and forth. So I read about half of it by listening and half of it by reading. But it was one of the most fascinating, kind of somewhat far future, quasi post-apocalyptic types of stories I might have ever read. I was just so impressed with the book all along when you're introduced to it and you see kind of what's going on. It's one of those, like, a lot of times you read a far future series. Let me give you an example, like Orson Scott Card's Ender's series. When you see something that's far future, you think, oh, well, it went here, 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 and that's how we got there. And that makes sense. Or even, super far future doing that kind of thing. A lot of science fiction, you can kind of connect the dots on your own. With this, like, it was one of those, like, how did we get where we are? And part of the book is kind of the discovery of how mankind about 500 or 600 years from now became what it did. And there's an element, I'm very spoiler averse, so I'm trying to be very vague with all of this. And when I talk about it, I try to be vague as well. But there's one element of the story that in 2026 makes 100% sense in the future. But knowing that he wrote it in like 1980, it is truly mind-boggling how he saw that path of where we were going. But the story itself is really about mankind trying to discover what it means to be human again, because they've kind of lost that in the centuries between like present day and this book. But it snuck up on me. Because Joanna and Jimmy spoke so highly of it, I figured it was going to be good, but I didn't see it as a potential book of the year for me. Just reading the back flap or whatever, and it blew me away. So thank you, Joanna. Because
you're welcome. But I also want to thank Bridger, because the reason I picked up that book is because Bridger chose that book as part of Jimmy Nutz's Patreon pick. And
Patreon, right.
Yeah, so he got the Patreon pick of the month through the wheel. And the reason why I immediately jumped on it is because I was so impressed, because I've watched Chatting with Nuts for forever. And every single time there's a Patreon pick, sometimes I'll see or know the book that is chosen for Jimmy, and I think, oh, why are they choosing this for Jimmy? And in this case, I felt like Bridger really thought through Jimmy's taste right now. That he looked for something that is short because Jimmy has been wanting shorter books. It's not book one in this series. It is more on the literary side. It's post-apocalyptic. I think that's the accurate description for it, to say post-apocalyptic.
Mhm.
And so everything that all the reasons that Bridger chose this book for Jimmy, I thought that is so perfectly aligned with what Jimmy, something to pick for Jimmy, but it also sounded like such an interesting book. So that's why I jumped on it. And I agree with everything you said. It is so, it feels so prophetic and in the worst way possible. And at
Yeah.
the same time, there's a response to it that it doesn't make it feel completely hopeless. And so, yeah, that's a fabulous pick. So we have to thank Bridger here.
Awesome.
Well, I read it a couple of years ago in preparation for that series of videos I did last year on apocalyptic fiction. And when I read it, because I didn't read it when it came out, I only read it for the first time, probably in 2023. I was shocked at how prophetic it seemed. I mean, it was really thought provoking, and I mean that's a overused term, obviously, but it really did make me think. And you're absolutely right, Joanna. When I recommended it as a Patreon pick for Jimmy, I was sure that this was going to be the perfect book for him. It turned out to not be the perfect book for him, although he did like it. But I was really excited when it got picked because I'd been in his Patreon for years and had never been picked, and so I was glad I finally got one picked.
Yeah. It's such a great book though. Actually, after I finished it, I ended up going out to coffee with my husband and a friend of ours, and it led us into this conversation based on the conversation in the book, like what would happen if, and how that book explores it. I'm like, do you think this would happen or do you think this would happen? And we just had this long conversation and I felt like it was completely sparked based on what I got out of that book. So yeah, I know it's a trite saying to say thought provoking, but it really
really
is.
Yeah,
I mean, it really, truly, incredible book in that way. Yeah. And so relevant. I actually think that's a good book for many of us to read right now. I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and say that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right. So, Bridger, biggest surprise read of 2025.
Well, mine is one that is a book that was recommended to me by a viewer, a subscriber who watched, I think, my first apocalyptic fiction video and said, "Hey, have you read this one? Because I really think you ought to read it." And it was one that I had never heard of. And I went, huh? Wait, what is that one? How did that one slip past me? And it's a novel from 1993. It's titled Random Acts of Senseless Violence by Jack Womack. And it's a powerful novel. I mean, it's and consistent with the theme of the last question. The protagonist is a 12-year-old girl who is, and it's a epistolary. I mean, it's a diary. It's a journal that she keeps. The entire thing is her diary entries over a period of several months, and she's living in Manhattan with her family, and the world around her is falling apart. Society, the social fabric that holds everything together is disintegrating. And it's sort of going from a functional democracy to a sort of fascistic Hobbesian type of state that is not good. Believe me, it's not good at all what's happening. But you see it through her eyes. 12-year-old girl who's seeing her family come apart, her friends come apart, the mentors, people who are there to help guide her. Everything is changing. And this book surprised me. I mean, not just because of the fact that I hadn't heard of it. I thought, how did I miss this one? How did this one fly under my radar for so long? But The title's misleading. I thought random acts of senseless violence. This sounds like something really graphic and brutal and just hardcore. And while there is some violence and there is some brutality in it, the title's a little misleading because this is a diary of a 12-year-old girl. And so the focus is not so much on graphic violence as it is on how her world is disintegrating. And it's also surprising because when I had it recommended to me, I looked it up on Goodreads and said, okay, well, what does Goodreads have to say about it? And it's like, hey, Goodreads likes it. That's encouraging. And then I looked at the tags on the Goodreads description of it, and it said, this is science fiction. Like, okay. This is cyberpunk. Like, okay. This is post-apocalyptic. Like, okay, great. Well, this all sounds like it fits within my apocalyptic fiction project that I'm working on. So I read it. I was surprised because, well, it's very punk. There's a lot of punk in it, but there's not much science. There's little or no cyber. I don't know why they called it cyberpunk. And if it's apocalyptic at all, it's certainly not post-apocalyptic. It's pre-apocalyptic because this is the process of social breakdown. But it hasn't completely fallen apart. It's not a wasteland. It's not, a totally destroyed civilization. This is following her, and just sort of following what's happening in Manhattan. And as I was reading it, it reminded me of the quote by Ernest Hemingway when he was asked, how he went bankrupt. And his response was, slowly, and then all of a sudden. And so that's essentially the feeling you get reading this, is that things are happening slowly until they aren't happening slowly. And it's a great progression through this very short novel. This is not a long novel. It's a quick read. And but then again, the most surprising thing for me is really following the emotional deconstruction of the narrator through her diary entries. She changes over the course of this short novel, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I really am glad I read this, and it really surprised me.
Wow. That sounds amazing. I especially like how that might be captured, that would be captured in an epistolary approach too.
Mhm.
So interesting. Yeah. All right. Have either of you heard of the book, by the way? Josh?
I have
Winslow?
not, no.
No?
But
Yeah.
this is great. I mean, I love, especially when he held up the book and it's small, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's my theme for 2026. So it's like
Yes.
excellent literature that doesn't take me 3 weeks to read.
Yes.
Terrific, absolutely.
Yeah, that should be your theme after the.
It is.
this year.
Goodness. Yes. I actually did manage to read a lot of excellent short books this last year. In fact, I was thinking about making a whole separate video about it. But I have two here, and one of them is one of those short ones. Before I get to that one, I'll say that maybe my biggest surprise in 2025 was The Silver Medal Lover by Tanith Lee. I've been talking about this because I do read romance now and then. It's something I dabble in now and then. I listened to a few Emily Henry audiobooks. I got to a Irish pub romance earlier in the year. I love Pride and Prejudice. I loved White Nights by Dostoevsky, which is a short story that's a little bit of a tragic, unrequited love story, sort of. And then I also loved The Day Boy and the Night Girl, which I talked about earlier, which is also considered a classic love story. But what made The Silver Medal Lover special for me, and I have enjoyed Tanith Lee before, and I've enjoyed Tanith Lee since, is because this was written, I think oh goodness, I should look up the date again. I want to say this is also 1981. Yeah, 1981. This was written in 1981. And it also, in some ways, feels very telling of conversations now as we have a young girl. This is set in a future setting when there was an asteroid that came close to hitting Earth, and it caused all types of cataclysms to occur. And we have this very, very wealthy elite character, this teenage girl named Jane, and she lives with her mother, who's very controlling. And she comes across a minstrel robot named Silver, and Silver is owned by a corporation. So there's this whole thing about corporate greed, selling or renting out these robots to wealthy citizens who rent these robots for entertainment at parties. They have them play it, like, for example, the Silver guy, he plays the guitar and sings. So he does that at a party, and also for sexual pleasure. And that's to either men or women in the story. But she ends up coming across him and she's just shocked because she suddenly realizes, oh my goodness, I'm in love. I think I'm in love with this man. I think I'm in love with him. And he warns her. He says, he's very gentle with her, and he has this, he has this kindness and gentleness about him. But because of course he's programmed to be pleasing towards humans, but it's done in a way that is different than how you might expect. And the way that he responds to her was different than might be expected as well. And she ends up thinking she falls in love with him, and they end up completely influencing one another. And there's fabulous chemistry in this book. But the thing about it is about also this fear going on in society about these robots that are taking over jobs and that are replacing romantic partners and emotional relationships with these robots, and also taking over the arts. And I know that these are very cautionary themes, but again, I don't think this is this is not a cautionary book, but at the same time, it was so interesting to read about the questions it brings up for something that was written in 1981, kind of like Mockingbird in that way. But again, I think it was just the romance in the story completely took me by surprise, how swept away I was. And I thoroughly enjoyed the setting descriptions, and it just truly swept me away. And I almost DNF'd it several times in the first half. So that was also the biggest surprise to me, how much I ended up loving this book. But my other favorite book or biggest surprise, I should say, and one that I really struggled about, I actually have another one that I could say I really struggled about when it came to my top 10 that didn't quite make it. But one of them has got to be Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. Now, this is a 99-page novella that was written in 1911. And I read this with my mother over Christmas break. And we read it, we both had the same copy, and we would read aloud to each other while we were reading it together. And this is about a very poor farmer man. It's actually a bit of a frame narrative with a nameless narrator. I read several books with nameless narrators lately. I don't know what that's about. And this guy is he's clearly at the beginning of the story in the present timeline. He's been through something horrible in his past. And you could tell by the way he's a bit disfigured. He has this gash on his forehead. His shoulders are a bit crooked. And yet he seems, even though he seems a bit removed, a bit somebody who doesn't really want to confront people, he seems a bit private. He also seems to have a gentleness about him too. There seems to be a kindly part of him. And then we flash back to his past and we learn about what led to this event, what led him to where he is now. It is a forbidden love story. And yet it's so much more than that too. It is, the thing that you learn at the end of the book, the direction it went was for me so unexpected. And Edith Wharton, what a phenomenal writer. Just gorgeous, striking descriptions of this snowy Massachusetts town that comes to a standstill because there's so much snow. And then there's so much contrast in the way she describes the setting. And it's certainly there symbolically to foreshadow things to come in the story. So I just thought this was absolutely incredible for a 99-page novella, classic work of literature, American novelist. And yeah, just I was just really surprised by the book. I think it was a bit not what my mom was. I don't know if I can't tell if my mom, I think my mom is just in shock. I'll just say that. I think it put her in a state of shock afterwards. But yeah, it was absolutely unforgettable. So that was a big surprise for me too. And I'll quickly mention one more um, really quickly, and that is one that I also felt bad for this not making my top 10. I really struggled with it, but that is going to be The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. And the reason that this book surprised me is because, well, there's so many phenomenal things about this book. Actually, I think this book, of all the books I read this last year, with maybe the exception of Book of the New Sun, this one to me has the most reread ability. Like there's so many layers and aspects of culture and anthropology in the storytelling, and also done with Ursula K. Le Guin's dexterity of prose, where she is able to change her writing style to suit one character versus another in an interesting way. Obviously, explorations of gender, but also betrayal, dual societies, which is something I love in storytelling. I love a dual society exploration. And the reason this was such a surprise for me is because it was challenging for me to get into the story initially. It took some time for me to get adjusted and grounded into the story, but I was surprised by how poignant it became towards the end and how emotional it was and some of the conversations it brought forth. And clearly some Taoist themes there. You can see the yin yang symbol. But yes, that was a truly great read. I think I'm going to love this even more on reread, but it did leave a very strong impression on me. And it's one of the ones I'm worried I might regret not putting in my top 10 again. So yeah. And
It's funny. I read Ethan Frome as when I was in high school, and I hated it. It was probably my least liked reading assignment in my English lit classes that I took in high school. And I was not ready for that type of story. I wasn't ready for reading that kind of literature. I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction way back then. And it took me until I was probably well into my 30s that I finally went back and revisited, not Ethan Frome. I haven't actually revisited Ethan Frome, but you've convinced me I probably should. But I did go back and revisit Wharton and read a couple of her longer novels and discovered, hey, wow, these are really quite good. And I agree with you. She's a great writer. But for me, I'm really hoping to be surprised by Ethan Frome when I go back and revisit it, because it was one that I really never wanted to read again when I was 15.
oh, I was completely turned on my head with the way this book ends. It's interesting because I know a friend of mine reached out when she saw me mention this book and said, I read that when I was in high school or when I was in college or something. And she said, and I cried so hard. And I just, I guess different people have different reactions to it.
Mhm.
It is, I can understand people not liking it too, but it was totally down my alley. And I have not read anything else from Edith Wharton yet, but I certainly want to now. Want to read more classics in general. So, all right, going on from here, let's see. I love Rebecca by Du Maurier. Fantastic. A couple of surprises for me were E.M. Forster's The Time Machine. E.M. Forster's Machine Stops. I don't know why I read that wrong. The Machine Stops. And Michael Chabon's Yiddish Policeman's Union. I have not read The Policeman's Union. I don't know about that book. I have heard a lot about E.M. Forster as well, like A Room with the View, and I forget the name of his most famous book, but
Howard's End or Maurice, or
yeah,
still haven't gotten there yet.
yeah. I've not read.
The Machine Shops is science fiction.
Interesting.
Machine Stops is science fiction. It is about artificial intelligence, in fact, written
What?
as of 19 1911 or 1912 or so, somewhere around in then.
Wow.
It's really prophetic. It's what happens when society gets too reliant on technology and loses its humanity, and then the machine stops.
A Room with a View. Didn't he write A Room with a View? Am I thinking of the right author?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
he
Ian
wrote both
Forster.
literary fiction and science fiction?
Yes.
That's so interesting. What an interesting writer.
I mean,
Um,
it's literary science fiction, but it
Oh.
is definitely science fiction.
Yeah. Very nice. Great to hear about these books. Thank you. Britton says he also read The Yiddish Policeman's Union, which is a really good book. Okay, good to know. Though Cavalier and Clay is my favorite from him. And then John from Talking Stories here. Hello. Hey guys, in the middle of a writing session with Amy. Fantastic, but had to pop in and say hey to y'all. Thank you so much for stopping by. So Bridger, your book sounds like Parable of the Sower.
Except Parable of the Sower is farther along in the sort of disintegration of society. I mean, it's much farther along than the one that I just talked about. But yeah, there are some similarities.
Interesting. Yeah. Alan Moore's The Great One surprised me the most with how good it was. Britton, you've read everything. I love how well read you are. Goodness. And then let's see here. I'm reading Silver Medal Lover, and I'm not a romance reader. I adored that book. I hope you all like it. I feel like I know I've been singing its praises. I'm trying so hard not to be apologetic about it because I don't typically read a lot of romance. And so part of me is like, are people gonna just bounce off? Especially because the main character, she does act her age, and she does act her age based on the circumstances that she is in. And I can understand how that might be a little bit annoying for some people initially, but I did love that how the character transforms too. All right, fantastic. Yes, I'm certainly enjoying this author. I'm sure, I don't know. Bridger, have you read Tenthly?
Mhm.
Mm.
I will actually be featuring her in a video later this year.
Yay, fantastic. Yes,
Only I'll be featuring some of her probably lesser known works. I won't be doing Tales of the Flat Earth. I'll be doing some other, actually, she'll be in probably 2 videos because she also wrote children's fiction. So
yes.
I will be talking about her children's fiction, but I'll also be talking about some of her adult fiction.
Yeah, she was.
Specifically, her somewhat, well, specifically her fairy tales for adults, put it that way.
Yes, yes. She was very prolific, is what I've come to learn looking up everything that she has written. She passed away, I want to say, I'm not sure how long ago now, maybe 10 years ago. I'm not totally sure, but she lost a battle with cancer. But she left us a lot of really interesting books. And especially for those of you who don't mind more fairy tale-esque types of fantasy, then she's a great author to choose. I'm sorry, I didn't even ask you, Josh or Brian, because I just assume you haven't. But if you
You
have,
would be
let me know.
assuming correctly in my case.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was fabulous. Don Mates, Janie Wirtz's husband, has done a few of her covers though.
Cool.
And they're some of my favorite covers, especially Electric Forest, which is my favorite book by Janet Leigh. It's a science fiction book that was written in the late 70s. And he featured that cover when he was on Philip Chase's channel. So I think he's quite proud of that too. So, and he also did a cover for The Silver Medal Lover, by the way, too. Yes, the robot playing a guitar. I do love the music aspect of that story too. I mean, there's music and art that's prominently displayed in that. Need to dig into Wharton this year. Yes, fantastic. And then we have Kay the Fox in here. So Kay Fox the Great, that is. Yes, Le Guin, hooray. Yuck, it was boring. I know a lot of people feel that way about Le Guin, but or about Left Hand of Darkness. I feel like her science fiction is not as popular among fantasy readers. And I don't know if I'm imagining that or not. But I feel like it doesn't usually gel as much with fantasy readers. I feel like I'm a little bit of an outsider in that. And of course, Bridger reads everything. So I don't know where you stand about that, but yeah, but I know
I will say that I tend to prefer her fantasy over her science fiction, although it varies. I don't love all of her fantasy, and I actually really do love some of her science fiction. So it varies.
yeah, I know that you, Josh, were not as crazy about The Left Hand of Darkness. Is that correct? Am I imagining that?
Yeah, it's been like 10 years though, and it was a time when I wasn't reading a lot of science fiction, so it's one I want to revisit at some point, because I have read more of her that I've pretty much liked everything I've read since then. So I might be a different reader from when I originally read it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that, like I said, I really get the sense that this would reward a reread, that this one would reward a reread specifically. But having Jared here, Remains of the Day was my biggest surprise. I expected to like it. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. I am with you about that, Jared. That book made me far more emotional than I was expecting. It actually, I'll say this, it's the only book this last year that brought me to tears, which I know is going to be wild for some people to hear, considering I read some pretty emotional books last year, but there was something about Remains of the Day that hit me at my emotional core. And I can't, yeah, it truly was a very impactful piece for me. So yeah, let's see. Going on from here, my biggest surprise had to be a tie between The Sword and the Lion by Roberta Cray. Never heard of it before. Bought for a cool 90s cover on my top 5 reads of the year. Nice. All right. I know I keep on singing the praises of her books, of Tanith Lee. It's just so good. All right. We're going to go on to the next one from here. And let's see, where were we? That was the biggest surprise of the year. Biggest disappointing read. I think biggest disappointment of read. That sounds awkward. I need to fix that. But okay, it's the biggest disappointment of 2025. We're just going to leave it because I don't think I can edit it here. Brian.
All right, I'm going to keep this one very short and sour because none of you three have read this. None of you three will ever read this. Nobody in the chat has read it, nor will they ever read it. I'm a huge Benedict Jacka fan. He's the author of the Alex Verus series. I love Alex Verus. If you're a Harry Dresden or a Dresden Files fan and you want to branch out onto the other continent that is Europe and get a similar flair, a little bit darker, but not super dark, Alex Verus is terrific. So when Benedict Jacka came out with this new series called The Inheritance of Magic is book 1. I don't even know what the series is called. I won't be continuing it. I know there's another book already out. This is terrible. Don't read it. I never rant about books. That is not what I do on my channel. You guys know I'm super positive all the time, but this character was boring. The magic I didn't understand because it was so boring, and the plot was really boring, and the book was short and boring. And I don't know what Benedict Jacka did here, because the fact that this dude wrote Alex Verus that I completely love, and this is terrible. Moving on. That's it.
Oh, goodness.
Well,
Sounds like you need
Brian,
to do an unhaul
yes.
there.
Brian, about probably 10 years ago, I read the first few books in the Alex Verus series, and I did enjoy them. I never finished the series, but
yeah,
I will second your recommendation.
Thank you. And they actually do get better because just in Alex Verus, there's not really a good guy or a bad guy. Everybody's kind of very gray, and it mixes a lot. And the end antagonist that you haven't yet got to, Bridger, is phenomenal. One of the best I've read in urban fantasy. So if you're ever looking for a light read, you can return to the Alex Verus universe, but not that one, not this.
Not that one.
No, God, no. Just like, All right, moving on. I'll pass the baton of shame to Josh.
So, actually, I have a video coming out next week that's new favorites, unmet expectations, and biggest disappointments of 2025. I'll show you my biggest disappointment, but I'll talk about it more completely there. But Never Flinch by Stephen King. I guess my Cliff Notes version of this is, I'm appalled that one of the greatest masters of suspense that I've ever read can write such an unsuspenseful book that is supposed to be suspenseful. I joke about it, but it's not a joke. This is a crime thriller with no thrills. This is, I'm not one of the readers that are like, King needs to stop writing crime fiction or needs to stop writing Holly Gibney or anything like that. He just needs to write a good book again, because the last two have really disappointed me. This was so predictable. There were zero stakes. There was zero suspense, and it's supposed to be a crime thriller. Some of the secondary characters that have been in a few of the books have turned into caricatures at this point, and it was such a disappointment, because King for so long, well, this year I proclaimed somebody else my favorite author, but King for so long has been my favorite author, and it's kind of sad that I feel like he's lost his fastball, because this was just in many ways just a colossal failure. I've seen people like this, and most of the people that like this, to be honest, I feel just don't read in this genre very often, because if you've read like some of the ones we talked about, Connolly, Lehane, Winslow, Donald Westlake, I mean, there's so many great crime fiction authors that I've enjoyed, and this book just, he didn't do it. It was huge disappointment, because a new King book comes out. I'm excited. I read it when it's released, and this one was a bummer. So
did it tank more than The Talisman?
Oh yes, yeah. The Talisman was. I mean, the problem with The Talisman is it was just too long.
Yeah,
there were actually some interesting things in The Talisman, and there were some
that's true
scenes in The Talisman, but this was just like, it's a shame.
Yeah, that is really disappointing, especially for someone you consider a favorite author.
Yeah.
And probably your most anticipated release of the year, right?
It really was. Yeah.
That's too bad. All right, Bridger.
I had a tough time with this question because there were quite a few candidates that I had to consider.
You can go on to a list. I have a list too.
And it's funny because I didn't actually read very much fantasy last year, but almost all of the fantasy that I read are going to be on this question. And it was a disappointing year for fantasy. And some of this is obviously a function of expectations. If you go in with high expectations and those expectations aren't met, that's not good. But some of these, I didn't go in with particularly high expectations, and they still disappointed me. So the first honorable mention, and with my apologies, Brian, it's Dungeon Crawler Carl, Matt Denneman. Now, I will say, I'm just not
oh no,
a good. I'm just not a good fit for
the big one, Elizabeth.
I have tried over the last decade probably about a half dozen different lit RPGs, and I will give credit to Denneman. This is the first one I did not DNF. So the previous 5, I just could not finish them. And a big part of it is the artificiality of the storytelling and just the way the stories are told. For me, I need to feel like I'm in the story. That sort of immersive feel to it. And the artificiality of lit RPG storytelling keeps bumping me out of it. And I don't like that. And that's a big part of why I just can't get through any of them. I did get through Carl, the first book, but it was just too repetitive. There were some amusing parts. I mean, Princess Donut had her moments. The humor was awfully sophomoric, and the plot just kept repeating and very implausible. It sort of felt like Denneman said, okay, I'm going to take the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Hunger Games, and I'm going to mash them up with something else that I can't quite think of. But it just was this weird combination that didn't work for me. And And I had low expectations going in. It really didn't work for me. The next one, I had a little higher expectations, but not super high because I had tried this author before and DNF'd that novel by him. And that's Mark Lawrence's The Book That Wouldn't Burn. So I had tried Prince of Nothing previously and just didn't like it. Didn't like how he wrote the characters, didn't like his writing style. Book That Wouldn't Burn, similar problem. But here it was just the plot and the world building was nonsensical. It was illogical. The internal logic made no sense. If you really thought about what he was trying to put on paper, and he had these really profound thoughts and ideas that he was trying to put on paper. But 3/4 of the way into the novel, he, I think, realized, this really doesn't hold together internally. So I'm just going to completely change the internal logic. So rather than being more of a science fiction-y type story, it became a fantastical one, and everything becomes very hand-wavy. And just thought, look, this really annoyed me. Third disappointment, Sword of Kaigan.
You are redeemed. You are redeemed from the dungeon.
I will say,
Carl.
There are some scenes in Sword of Kaigan that are really well done. I mean, I will give her credit, the author credit, for writing some really excellent scenes, but a few great scenes do not make a great novel. And as a novel, it is a complete mess. I got very frustrated with it. I finished it. I mean, I didn't DNF it. I did read all of it, just like I read all of the Lawrence novel. But wow, I thought it would have worked much better as 2 novellas. The first half, turn it into a novella. The second half, turn it into a novella. Forcing everything together and leaving so many unfinished plot lines, because it's very clearly intended, or was intended, as the first book in a series. It just really fell apart for me. Those were my honorable mentions. However, the winner is not a fantasy novel. The winner is by an author who you actually mentioned, Joanna, just a few minutes ago.
Uh-oh.
And that is Emily Henry's Book Lovers.
I got to that this year, I think. Yeah.
All right, this novel frustrated me so much. And I am not averse to reading romance novels. This is not a rant against romance novels at all. This is about the execution of this romance novel that really frustrated me, because I had high expectations for it. I really thought this was going to be a good read. I mean, it had great advance, reviews, buzz. And it's a format that I do enjoy. Not always, but there are many of these types of books that I can enjoy, and I thought I would. And hey, it's about book lovers. Who wouldn't? A bibliophile, who wouldn't like that? Where do I start? The best part of this novel was, and I have it in 2 formats. So I have it in audio, but I also have the physical. And so in the physical format, there's a section at the very end, after the novel's over, which is the reader's guide that Emily Henry wrote for readers to sort of prompt them to think about it, and maybe as a way of framing maybe a future book club discussion type thing. But in the audio, that reader's guide is presented at the beginning. It's like a foreword to the novel that introduces or puts the novel in context. And I can say that had I not listened to the audio, I would have been much more frustrated with the novel than I was, because in this sort of reader's guide foreword, which is only 2 or 3 pages long, it's not long, Henry says, okay, what I decided to do here when I wrote this novel is I decided to take all of the tropes from your stereotypical Hallmark Channel sort of romantic comedy movie. And she said, I'm going to write a book that basically just nails all of those very tropey tropes. And she does it. She absolutely hits every single one of those tropes, which makes the novel incredibly predictable. But the fact that she forewarned me in the audio to say, hey, this is what's coming, made me feel a little more charitable toward it. Because if I hadn't had that forewarning, I would have been really frustrated that she wrote such a derivative novel, such an unoriginal novel, where, I mean, I'm ranting here. I know I don't normally do this. I'm like Brian. I like saying positive things about books. And the protagonists here, I didn't like them. You know, I like to at least find characters that I really like. And she seems so focused on writing banter, you know, lots of really snappy back and forth banter, but the banter is mean-spirited banter. It's not playful banter. It's not, and more importantly, it's mean-spirited and insincere. So one of the best things I love about Georgette Heyer and her romantic comedy novels that she writes is they have really good banter in them, or many of them do. But the banter is sincere. The characters actually believe what they're saying. They actually feel the emotions that they're expressing in their banter, even when it's negative banter, even when they're being critical and they're going back and forth. I did not feel like this was sincere at all. It was performative. And the narrator, the female main character, even admits that, yeah, I'm really not being honest in how I'm treating this guy. And I didn't like that. It just was the artificiality of the story, the plot points, the resolution of certain things toward the end, pulling things out of a hat, were so incredibly implausible, or at least not supported by any real foundation in the story. It's just sort of, hey, I need the plot to do something to resolve a problem, so the plot's going to do this thing. I'm ranting, I know.
I think the thing that annoyed me the most about that book were the sisters. I did not like the sister.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't want to spoil it. That
Sorry.
whole dynamic, both the relationship between the sisters and then ultimately the instrumental role that the sister plays. Just, where's the foundation for this? Where I really wanted it to be a much, much, much better book, because I had just been, and part of the problem is I literally read this right after reading a Georgette Heyer novel. And the contrast was so obvious that here you have, a plot and characters who feel real. And with Henry, these did not feel real. And I really didn't like the whole dragon lady, I'm a career woman type thing. I have nothing against career women. I love career women. I'm married to a career woman. It's the stereotype of, I need to be a dragon lady to be successful in business. That whole trope really annoys me. It can be played for laughs. It can be, but this main character felt like a cross between Carrie Bradshaw, the absolute worst character on Sex and the City, and Miranda Priestley, the boss lady, dragon lady from The Devil Wears Prada. I don't like either one of those characters. Anyway, I'll stop.
Doomed not to like it. Yeah, I was wrong. I read that book at the end of last year, but yeah.
I have not given up on Emily Henry. The fact that she admitted in that little 2-page guide or whatever that she intentionally was trying to recreate those really ridiculous Hallmark Channel movies and the plots and everything. It's like, okay, maybe in other works that she's written, she doesn't do that. So I will try her again.
I don't have the highest hopes you're going to like her other books, but I'd be curious to hear them regardless. So, Like Bridger, I actually have a whole list. I even thought, should I make a most disappointing books video? And I don't think I will. I don't know. But there were several that were disappointing. I know some people make a distinction between worst and most disappointing. I guess I'll just quickly go through some of the ones that were a bit disappointing for me personally. I was disappointed with The Talisman by Stephen King because I really wanted to like it. I had heard mixed things about it, but I think Josh pretty much nailed it by saying it felt bloated. And I am usually so resistant to saying that a book is bloated or that there's too much meat on the bone, sort of thing. I really resent saying that half the time because I think that often, a lot of times, those extra parts to a book can sometimes add to character depth or meaning in the storyline. But in that book, I did feel so bored. I felt so bored and uninspired, and the villains fell so flat for me. And I found one of the characters very whiny and annoying. There were some good parts. There was an interesting character, but yeah, it was not what I wanted. I already mentioned Since We Fell by Dennis Lehane. I picked his worst book. Oh no, Brian's gone. I hope he comes back. Oh, there he is. I don't know if he
Add
wants
me
me.
back in. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, cool.
I still am glitching. I don't know what's going on.
Oh no, I'm seeing that now. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just check my Wi-Fi real quick, but I'll be back.
Okay, sure. And if you need me to add you back in, just let me know. Yeah, so Since We Fell, it was it was the most incohesive book I read this last year. I feel like Dennis Lehane was trying to do too many things that didn't come together. It had some good moments. There were good sentence by sentence lines and aspects of atmosphere, and I could see the potential in his writing, but it certainly wasn't a book that came together for me or felt satisfying in any way by the time I finished it. Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. I am sorry, all of my friends, pretty much everyone who is a Sun Eater fan, which is basically everyone but me, I just did not quite connect to this book as much as I wanted to. And I understand everyone says, read on, read on, read on. And it's sadly, I did feel like I did find so many interesting ideas embedded in the storyline that had some potential, especially about exploitation and about different ways of looking at human, what it means to be human. Several things I did go in depth in my review. So check out my review if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about Empire of Silence. But yeah, for me, it was not, it was, okay, I'll put it this way. I read that book. I was on I want to say 10-hour flight back to the US from, let's see, where was the last place I was? I think from Paris. And I had no internet on that flight. I had nothing but the book. And I think that that's what helped me get through it because I did not want to pick up that book. I had such a hard time feeling interested in it. And I think some of the writing was difficult for me to visualize. I found some of the side characters a little bit flat for me. They didn't quite stick with me. So then when they came up later on, I'm like, who is this? Who is this? There were some other things I can't remember. Again, see my review if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts. Made Things by Adrian Tchaikovsky, little novella. I found the writing in this so clunky. There were several sentences in there that were awkward, and I did not find this story very interesting. And it seemed fun. It seemed like a Tinkerer fantasy story with little puppet people. And it was very forgettable for me and not interesting at all. So that was sadly a big miss, especially after hearing so much praise for Tchaikovsky. And I did love his book, his standalone, Guns of the Dawn. Could not think of the title of that. And then, let's see, City of Thieves, which I know is another popular one by David Benioff, I think is his last name. I can't remember. I think this book was actually probably the best of my most disappointing reads in terms of writing. I thought like it was extremely well written, like it's very cinematic. I felt like I listened to the audiobook and mostly I had the physical book too. And I felt like I was in a movie for most of this book. I was so into it. It was so extraordinary. how well he was able to do some character work and moments of melancholy, especially he brought up Mahler, which I'm a huge Mahler fan, and sadly, because this is a World War II fiction novel, I felt like the plot armor at the end of the book was probably the worst I've ever seen in a story, and it pulled me out so dramatically at the end. It completely just ruined the stakes when the character could get away the way he did. I don't know. I did not. I was just extremely disappointed with the direction of that story, and I wasn't totally crazy about the way um, the story. Some other things about the story also didn't work for me, and it made me realize that I need to be careful when it comes to picking up certain types of historical fiction because I feel like, especially when it comes to something like World War II and the Nazis, I feel like it's easy to I felt like it was an emotional manipulation to some degree to try to make the villains bad guys because 'cause they're Nazis. You know what I mean? There was something about that that just didn't it felt like I could see the author's hand too strongly throughout the second half of the novel, and so that was a bit of a disappointing one, but again, there was a lot of promise for me in the first half, so it was more just like the end made me realize that there was something about the emotional manipulation that just didn't quite work for me. Um, and then the number one biggest disappointment for me in 2025 has a lesson attached to it, boys and girls, and that is I'm gonna get so much hate for this, all of my thoughts here, but The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. This is book 2 in the Dandelion Dynasty, and the message behind this is do not buy broken binding special editions for a series you haven't read and
Yeah.
until you know you're gonna love it because oh, what a disappointment for me. I really enjoyed the first book, The Grace of Kings. And the reason I liked it so much is because I thought it was really interesting. I guess there was an aspect of novelty for me in how he was constructing an empire and showing so many different parts that were functioning in this empire and this rebellion towards the empire, different kinds of characters who were not necessarily in the highest positions or the highest nobility, but also lay people, just different kinds of people and characters that were important in the story. And I thought that was really unique and interesting. And I did like the two characters that were featured in this book. Now, this book takes place after a bit of a time gap from book 1. And I was so disappointed, especially after hearing that this was BookTube's darling. This was like everyone's favorite book of the year a couple of years ago. Like every time you'd see those collaborative videos, what was my favorite book of the year? Everybody held up this book. And so I was so sure I would love it. And I really enjoyed the Paper Menagerie short story collection by Ken Liu. And like I said, I enjoy Grace of Kings. So I thought it was so promising. I was going to love the Dandelion Dynasty. And again, I'm going to point you in the direction of my review where I go more in depth about my thoughts for it. If you want to hear more in depth thoughts, it's the same video as where I talk about Empire of Silence. But this book for me was a bit of a disappointment because I think that one of the things that Ken Liu does in order to be efficient as a writer is he's very big into telling rather than showing. So he's able to relay a lot of information without going into a lot of detail in these sweeping descriptions of what's happening. And he goes into a lot of backstory. So he combines a lot of that technique with a lot of flashbacks. And the flashbacks were just not that interesting to me. I found the telling device and the flashbacks and the combination of these two things to make me feel a bit distanced from the story, from the emotions of the story. And then the third thing that grated on my nerves, and I know I'm alone in this, but I'll stand alone on that hill, is the use of repetition in the book. And what I mean by that is that there are certain phrases or statements that are repeated over and over and over again. And they're from even the first book, like the most interesting thing. Let's do the most interesting thing, the most interesting thing, or the universe is knowable. All these like phrases that are said over and over and over and over again. And I think that the idea behind the repetition was to like build this profound sense of, yes, I'm united with this feeling of solidarity, that we all are aspiring towards this most interesting thing, or I don't know what it was that he was going. I think that's what he was going for. That's my guess. But for me, these statements became like hollow platitudes after a while. They just overstayed their welcome, and they sadly took away from some of the more dramatic moments in the story for me. It did not feel like it challenged me in any way. There were some things that were interesting in the book and some interesting characters, but sadly, it just did not, it did not win me over. And I had a wonderful discussion about this book, with some friends, and I was hopeful that that discussion would change my mind, that maybe if I talk to some friends who love this book, then maybe I'll be convinced that to rethink about things and maybe process it and appreciate things a little bit more deeply. And it didn't work. Sadly, after the discussion, I still fail to find a love for this book. So sadly, I just wasn't the right reader for it. I will still be open to reading more from Ken Liu in the future, but not the Dandelion Dynasty, probably. Especially because, oh, another thing I didn't even mention, heavy descriptions of engineering and how that works. That's never my thing in a fantasy story, and I didn't know that this would go so heavily into those details. So, yeah, expectations sadly not met, and very unpopular opinion on my part. Have any of you guys read the Dandelion Dynasty? No.
I've read through the first two books. I've been meaning to finish it. I just haven't gotten to the
Uh-huh.
others. I did like the first book better than the second, although I wasn't nearly as negative on the second as you are.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Big hot take from me. I don't think I'll be continuing, and sadly, I think I need to unhaul this. And I know I'm going to probably make a lot of people mad. So let's hear it. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I'm trying to think of where to start. Whew. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Brian left because the talisman was so bad. Yeah, probably not Stephen King's best book. I wouldn't start there personally. And it is fantasy, by the way, and it has connections to the Dark Tower series. But I don't know. I wasn't really all that. The payoff wasn't high. Okay. Thank you so much. And Empire of Mid. Oh, I feel so bad. Oh. I cannot stand Sun Eater. What? Really?
I
I
like
thought
that.
I was the only one that.
No. Hey,
That's a good word, Heidi. Windbaggery.
Joanna, you're not alone in this stream. I'm not a fan.
It does get better after the first book. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
Well, that's as far as I've read. I read the first one and have not continued.
Yeah. I've heard he was quite young when he wrote that first book too. So it's good to know. I haven't read Sun Eater, and I've only had an urge to when the release gala thing happened, because that was really cool. More authors need to do that. Okay. Sun Eater isn't the most overhyped series I've read, but it's pretty high up there. Yikes. Yeah. All right. Howling Dark. Where are the women, please? All off camera. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Valid.
That's worrisome for me too. Hesitant to read the Sun Eater books. And then favorite new character, Surreal. Yes, from Aspect Emperor. Good choice. And let's see, by RSB, and Attilius from Pompeii by Robert Harris. Nice. The best of the worst. Oh my goodness. Made Things is the worst Tchaikovsky book. Yeah, I think just like Lahane, I chose the worst Tchaikovsky book. Yep, I know. I'm sorry. I know. I'm happy if you all loved it. I was a bit disappointed with that ending, but I mean, it did have a lot of redeeming qualities. The rest of the book, I will say that there were several things I liked in the book up till that point. Yeah, I do too. That's why I say most disappointing, because I really wanted to love it, and I really enjoyed The Grace of Kings. So it was a bit of a disappointment. Yeah. And yeah, I won't speak for Philip here, but you could watch that discussion. All right. Let's see. All right, I'm going to skip ahead here because I feel bad for outing any of Philip's feelings, but you all can hear them for yourself if you want to. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Ooh, that was heavy. So I will not be doing a worst books of the year because I feel like I pretty much went off here. Which I never do. I don't usually have books I'm disappointed by. Okay. Favorite new release in 2025, Brian.
Okay. Well, I don't know if my Wi-Fi is even working right. So
It is right now.
it's okay. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. So, all right, this book came out in May. I planned to read it on release day, and my life was kind of turned upside down this year. Didn't get a chance to read it until late summer, early fall. I don't know why it has such mixed reviews in the booktube community. Some people love it like I do. Some people just thought it was awful. I thought it was terrific. I'm talking about The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Loved this book. And I mean, it's like in some regard, I say to the people that didn't like it, have you not read Joe Abercrombie before? Because there's nothing really substantially different about the authorial voice in this book than there is in First Law. Joe Abercrombie writes like Joe Abercrombie. Really funny guy. The humor is not shoehorned in at all, even though a lot of people on BookTube think it's way too humor forward than it ought to be. But that's what Joe Abercrombie's world is. That's his wheelhouse. I love this book. This is Suicide Squad meets The Creature Commandos. Cool adventure story, compelling, weird characters. I'm looking forward to the second book that I think is coming out in 2026. This was a big win for me.
Yay. Well, I'm so glad you liked it. I still haven't read it, but I'm really glad to.
The Bridger was laughing, so maybe he hated it. I don't know.
Well, let's go on. I know we've changed the order a little bit. Let me switch this back a little bit so we're in the same order. Okay.
And the reason why I'm being so fast is because my camera might die at any point. So like,
oh, no.
I'm going to try to get as many as I can in for
Oh,
you.
goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try to move a little faster. Bridger, have you read it? Have you read The Devils?
Yes, it is one of the 3 books from 2025 that I did read. Do you want me to go now, or do you want to go, Josh?
Okay, we'll go to Josh
Okay.
first, and then we'll come back to you.
I don't read a lot of things upon release, but I did read several this year. So this was actually kind of a tough choice for me. And I actually went with a self-published book. And I think he's still in the chat. The Execution of Rooker Flynn by A.R. Witham. This was the 3rd book in the Locke Institute series, which is kind of I think you would call it a loose sequel to The Legend of Black Jack. It's set in that world of Keymark that he wrote in that series or in that book. And it follows a different character, and it's a different kind of series. It's a bit darker than Legend of Black Jack, and it is a kind of a shorter trilogy. But I mentioned when I was talking about the Lies of Locke Lamora, when I talked about friendship and fantasy being something I like, Andy does a really good one in this series. And I found myself, really emotionally tied to these characters by the time that I got, especially to the end of this series in this 3rd book. And the pacing was really, really fast and really good. It takes place in it's like 12 hours or something like that. And it starts with the execution of this guy in the front. But the story came together just superbly, and I just really love the way that he ended the series. And I look forward to potentially more series in that world of Keymark.
Ah, that's fantastic.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and Bridger.
Okay. Well, as Josh said, I'm the same way. I normally don't read books the year they come out. I mean, it's rare when I do, and it's usually tied to a specific author that I just really want to read because they're an author I really enjoy. And this year I did read 3. The first one was a post-apocalyptic novel that I wanted to get to for the series of videos I was making, called All the Water in the World, by an author named Aaron Caffan. It's sort of if you took Station 11 and instead of having it be a post-worldwide pandemic, make it a climate fiction, the seas are rising type situation. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was just sort of, at this point, run-of-the-mill literary apocalypse. Nothing really jumped out at me as great, so it's not my favorite. The second one I read, The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. And I am going to confound you here, Brian, because I'm at neither extreme.
Okay.
I'm actually surprised.
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. In fact, there are parts of it I thought were really well done. Even though in some respects they were too over the top for my personal preference, I still thought they were well done. The cliffhanger aspect of putting the characters in situations where you just know there's no possible way they can survive. And yet, no, I don't think that's really a spoiler, but but it happens repeatedly, which of course got a little repetitive, a little frustrating. Like, okay, does it have to keep happening so repetitively? Or the quippiness of the dialogue. You're right. Abercrombie loves quippy dialogue. However, I think there was too much of it. I really do. People don't normally talk, 95% of their dialogue as quips. They normally just talk normally.
This is
It was just too much.
This is making me even more positive that we need to announce our new podcast, the Bridger and Brian Show, called Sense and Nonsense. I'll let the audience decide which one of us is the sense and which one of us is the nonsense.
I will say,
good contrast.
There were parts of it. There were parts of the novel I really did enjoy. So I'm very mixed on The Devils, which brings me to my final book, and I'm really not going to say much about this one at all because I've already talked about this book, and this is a plug for a video, a conversation that I had with Josh and Jake Bishop earlier this year, where we revisited our Guy Gavriel Kay tier rankings. And that would be Written on the Dark.
Makes sense.
Guy Gavriel Kay, which I did quite enjoy, although I am not nearly as positive on this Kay novel as I am on most of his others. And not that it's bad. It's very good. I just felt like it was incomplete, that he rushed the completion of the novel. It's a very short one. This is one of his shortest, if not his shortest. And there were time jumps in the story that I felt like he probably should have written those time periods that he skipped over, that there were things that happened that were important and would have really benefited from more description and just walking us through it as part of the story. So it's my favorite, but I didn't have a lot to choose from here.
Very nice. Okay. I need to continue my Guy Gavriel Kay journey, which I will be doing this next year. I only read one Kay book this last year, which was A Brightness Long Ago, and it was fantastic. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but have been pausing that journey for now. I, like all of you, or actually, Brian, you might read more new release. You often read new release titles?
Not particularly, no. I've just been mired in huge long series for the last few years. And unless it's an ongoing series that comes out, then generally not. And also a lot of the new release stuff I read is Lit RPG, which you can find on Bridger's second channel. Bridger reads Lit RPG. It's phenomenal. It's a top 10 YouTube experience. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Go subscribe.
Yes. And smash that post notification bell so you never miss one of his Lit RPG videos. It's great.
That is fun. So I only read one new release in 2025, and I also obviously don't read a lot of new releases. I find, for me, I have a better experience if I wait a little while, which is what I'm doing with The Devils. I'm going to wait a while. Maybe I'll wait till the rest of the trilogy comes out. I'm not sure. Yeah, I might do that too, which I know that's not.
Yeah, I bought it to support the author.
Yes.
That's what I'll do. I buy to support the author, but I'll wait till the whole series is out and then.
I'm not totally sure how I'm going to feel about it. Given, I don't know. But I do love Abercrombie's writing, especially all the first law books, especially The Age of Madness is my favorite. But the new release that I read in 2025 is No Life Forsaken by Steven Erikson. So this is book 2 in the Witness series. I guess this is going to be a series now. It was originally supposed to be a trilogy, but now it's a series. This is following The God Is Not Willing, and I also read The God Is Not Willing when that was released. And this takes place after the 10-book series, Malaz and Book of the Fallen. This one is, even though it's the sequel to The God Is Not Willing, it takes place in a different part of the world with a completely different cast of characters. There are some characters that you will recognize from the 10-book series. And I had a great time with this book. When I read it, I did note that a couple of things. I did note that I didn't quite have the same emotional highs with this book as I have with the 10-book series. But I'm going to say a very unpopular opinion, which is I might have had more fun with this one than The God Is Not Willing. I don't know, because that's hard for me to say too, because it's been a few years since I read The God Is Not Willing. So I don't feel like I know if my experience is accurate in saying that. But I love Erickson's writing, and I had forgotten how much I love Erickson's writing. And then when I read this book, I definitely found that to be the case. I also felt like the only other thing I would say about it is, yes, we have a possible apocalypse on the horizon, a rebellion that's on the horizon. There are religious themes in this story. The only thing I would say about it, though, that might be a bit of a negative, and I'm not sure, is, and I don't know if it is, it's that in a lot of Erickson's books, something I really like about his writing is sometimes he will propose a theme in the form of you trying to explore it from different angles. So maybe you'll see a positive side to it in one part, and then maybe a negative display of that theme in another section of his book or series. And in this, it felt very very clear that this idea about freedom overall means that freedom of oppression, and then this idea of taking responsibility for some of the horrific things that happen in society, that each of us has to do that. We can't just also look at the conflicts outside of ourselves. We have to look at it internally. So I thought that was actually really well presented throughout the book. I just don't know that this particular book or this particular theme about faith and about looking at conflict externally and internally, even though I did appreciate it, I don't know that it quite challenged me or affected me on the level that some of the other explorations in other books by Erikson have. But it was good, and I had a great time with it. I had a fabulous discussion of this book over on Library of Alexandria's channel. Again, not as high of highs as some of other Erikson's other books, but yeah, it did actually make me. I did say in my review that if the next book were released today, I would pick it up immediately. Like I'm here for this series, and yeah, I'm not disappointed at all. So that's my answer there. Let's see, going on from here.
My camera's glitching again.
Oh
Just
no.
give me a moment. Yeah, I don't.
Sure. Yeah.
My camera's got like a time limit on it where it starts to overheat, and I just wonder if I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi or if it's my camera. So I'll just exit off again, and we'll see if I can fix it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hopefully that will get working again. Let's see. So Brian is backstage. Brian, just send me a message in the private chat if you get that figured out. And we're going to go on from here. So yes, I know that Empire of the Dawn? Is that the last one? Or wasn't there the third one maybe in the Kristoff series? Is that, I'm guessing that's what you're talking about. I'm not sure I read anything brand new, possibly a re-release. Oh yeah. Okay. The only new release I read was Everything is Tuberculosis. I've been hearing so much praise about this book, and I do highly recommend it. Yeah, I've heard such good praise for it. And let's see here. I'm only now picking up some 2025 books. I have high hopes for 3 books. Nidio Korafor, Death of the Author, The Tusks of Extinction, and There is No Antimetrics Division. Cool. Fun book, but dragged too long talking about the devils, probably. Haven't read The Devils yet because comparisons I've heard to Suicide Squad, which I'm not a fan of. Yeah, it just seems like very divisive. The Devil seems extremely divisive. I know Jimmy Nuts loved the book. He stood by that. Okay. Yep. My favorite new release. Oh, I've been hearing so much about King Sorrow by Joe Hill. Have either of you two picked this up or had interest in it?
I have it, but I haven't read it yet.
I gave it to my brother for Christmas because I just had a feeling that he might like it, and he got excited. So I guess he's a fan of Joe Hill's.
I've read a couple of his. I mean, he's solid. So, yeah, I've heard that it's his best book, but I haven't picked it up yet.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. Every bit as good as books 1 and 2. That yes, Empire of the Vampire. So it is the last one, and I'm glad to hear that because I guess that's another one that I hear is a bit divisive, especially the third book. So good to hear that. And I try King Sorrow. Yeah, I've been curious about it. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. Brian, give me a nod or wave at me whenever you're ready. Okay, cool. I'm gonna add you back. Let's see if that fixed it. Hope that worked out.
I don't know. Maybe.
You seem fine at the moment. I hope
Yeah.
it's That's so such a struggle. I'm sorry that you're struggling with that.
Well, you can join the Jimmy Nuts and Brian Bell podcast at techusa.com when we talk about common issues that happen during live streams.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to join that. Then.
If it's overheating, you might try reducing the resolution at which it's filming. So if you're filming in HD or 4K, bumping it down. If you back it down to a lower resolution, that should dissipate or generate less heat.
I think you're right. Also, if the camera does die, I can always go to my FaceTime camera on my laptop here. So it just won't look very good. It'll be my giant noggin dead center in the middle of this thing. So it'll be perfect. We'll scare the children. It'll be fine.
I don't think so. I'm just using my phone as a camera. So I'm definitely not as high tech.
or honestly, it could be my Wi-Fi too. I don't know. I was rendering a video earlier and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe my CPU or the video card. I have no idea.
Oh, that's so
It's
frustrating.
fine.
I'm sorry, Brian.
It's fine. Oh, no big deal.
All right. We'll go on to the next one. I'm going to switch the order again. One book from this year you'd recommend to everyone. I like this question. I know AP is somewhere out there saying that's the most asinine thing in the world to say that a book is for everyone, but but we're talking mainly the general audience that watches our channels. So we'll start with Brian.
Okay. So this is Eyes of Empire by J.C.M. Byrne. This is turn 5 in the Hybrid Helix, which means nothing to you if you've not yet read Wistful Ascending, which is book 1 in the turn of a Hybrid Helix. Again, Joe Byrne, J.C.M. Byrne, super friend of the channel. This is superheroes in space. It's very lighthearted. It's fun, but it does have some meaningful themes. It's got some interesting character growth as we go through this. And, you know, I know the term palate cleanser gets thrown around a lot on, BookTube. And, when you're done with a heavy read, go find yourself a palate cleanser and cleanse the mind. This has really done that for me. Joe's a naturally funny guy, kind of like a Joe Abercrombie, where he's not intentionally setting out to write humor, but it's just in his nature to kind of be funny. Less so in the quippy way, I think, that Bridger described in The Devils. This is just, a guy who is essentially a former military operative for a huge empire that has retired, and he's taken a job towing spaceships into his space station just to have a mundane, normal job that really only a superhero could do. And of course, trouble finds him in all kinds of places. And the cast is great. It's fun. They're very quick reads. And they don't take themselves too seriously. And I think that is why I could recommend this to just about anybody, because it doesn't insist upon itself. It's just is what it is. It's fun. If you like it, terrific. If you don't, you don't. But it wouldn't take anybody more than a few chapters to go if this is for them or not. This is an easy one to recommend, really, for people that like any kind of genre.
Yay, nice. And is it Joe? Is it that his first name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Joe is super, super nice. I have
Mhm.
not read the books. He actually told me in the fireside, he said, Joanna, I really enjoy the way you talk about books, and I want to recommend my book to you, but I don't think you'd like it.
I actually think you would. I mean, there's
Really?
nothing
Oh,
to hate about those books.
oh,
Is it malazan? No, but it's
no,
not trying
no.
to
Wouldn't
be.
expect that.
It's
Yeah,
not trying to be classic literary fiction. It's
right.
trying to be a fun story about a guy who's had it, who happens to be a superhero and just wants a normal life.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. That's yeah. Um, I yeah, I've heard so much praise across the board from many different readers who've enjoyed that book or that series. So yeah, great. All right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And Josh.
So that isn't my answer, but I'll second what Brian said about Wistful Sending because I read it this year and really enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I love that there's a there's a lot of nuance in the story. It's not it's not over the top kind of superhero cheesy stuff. And I like the main character has just a kind of underlying optimism to him that I really enjoy. But my choice, I figured since I was disparaging on Stephen King earlier, I wanted to recommend a Stephen King, but I reread Different Seasons this year, and this is a novella collection that most people probably know this one very well. There are 4 novellas in here, and 3 of them became very famous adaptations. Rita Hayworth's Shawshank Redemption is one. There's a great one called Apt Pupil. The one that wasn't adapted is called The Breathing Method. And then the other one is called The Body, which became a delightful film called Stand By Me. But this is many times when people ask me where to start with King, this is generally one of the places that I tell them is a great place to start because it does have a lot of variety. You know, you get a kind of psychological horror and Apt Pupil. Breathing Method is very fantastical. Shawshank Redemption is frankly quite literary, and then The Body is a great coming of age story. But I really enjoyed my reread. I'm doing a several years project of rereading all of Stephen King's short fiction collections, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I think in many ways his short fiction is more consistent than his novels, and I've really loved that project. So Different Seasons is probably the most universal book that I can recommend to people that I read in 2025.
Yeah, both of the Body and Shawshank Redemption sound so interesting. Of course, I saw the movie of Shawshank Redemption many years ago. I don't remember it very well. It's my brother's favorite movie of all time, but yeah, I certainly am interested. So, fantastic. All right, Bridger, what's your answer for this?
All right, I struggled with this one, and my immediate reaction was a lot like AP's would have been, I imagine, that how do I figure out a book that's going to appeal to everyone? And ultimately concluded, well, I can't. And so I narrowed it down to 2 that I thought had the potential for fairly wide appeal. In part because a lot of what I read, I knew would not have wide appeal. I mean, they have very narrow audiences. A lot of the things that I read over the past year, but both of these books that I narrowed it down to, I've already mentioned. The first is the Bromeliad trilogy by Terry Pratchett, which, as I said, was written for young readers, but really it can appeal to anyone of any age, and it's a lot of fun. The humor might not appeal to everyone because Pratchett's humor can be a bit of an acquired taste. But like I said earlier, the humor is dialed down a bit in this trilogy. So I think it has a potential to appeal fairly widely. But the other one that I ultimately concluded that I would pick is the one I mentioned earlier, Dennis Line's The Given Day. Again, this one might not appeal to everybody. There's some parts of it that are really brutal, really ugly. But it's very well written, and it covers a period of history, period in time that has rarely been covered in fiction, at least in my experience. I have not run across a lot of books that are from the sort of early 1900s, that the teens, and I know the trilogy goes into the 20s, although I haven't gotten to the other books in the trilogy. But in American history, that was not a really good point in our history. It was a somewhat ugly period in our history where you've got a lot of bad things happening, and things that the government is doing, or people in positions of authority or power that are doing that. Now, 100 years later, we look back and go, that really was bad. It really should not have happened that way. And you have, the Red Scare going on. You've got race riots. You've got union busting. You've got police corruption. And of course, there's the curse of the Bambino in this novel. And so all of these things combined can make this potentially an unpleasant read, except Lehane does such a great job of spinning a tale that mainly follows three characters, or three different storylines that keep intersecting over the course of the novel. You have a policeman, an Irish policeman in Boston, who is the son of a police captain there, and is thought that he's going some places. He's going to be one of these people that will make his mark and follow in the family tradition and be a leader of the police department. There is a young black man who is on the run from something he did out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he finds his way to Boston and intersects with the family, the Coughlin family of the police captain and his son. And then there are point of view sections from the perspective of Babe Ruth, the baseball player.
Oh, wow.
Which, in strange ways, I mean, that was probably the most disjointed part of the whole structure of the novel, were the Babe Ruth sections, but he intersects with those characters, and it's really well done, and is a really compelling read. But it can be a pretty brutal read in places, so it might not appeal to everyone.
Wow. Great choices, though. I could see Josh is nodding quite a bit. So,
Yeah, Joanna, I think that's the one that you should read when you
The
try
Given
it
Day.
again. I mean, I think it's his greatest book, and I don't tell people to necessarily start with that one unless I really, really know their reading taste. And knowing your taste, I think it's in many ways one of his, if not his most literary novel that he's written. So I think it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books. It's my favorite book by him.
Great. Excellent. And is that one part of a series, or didn't we say it? No?
Yeah, it's a trilogy.
Yeah.
It's
And
it's a loosely written trilogy. Yeah, it's basically three novels that share characters, but the second and third books actually follow a different protagonist. So it's not necessary to. You wouldn't have to be committed because it tells a complete story.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go into my answer for this question, which is also very difficult because I always think of the exception too when it comes to this. Always. Actually, I'm going to start with one, KJ Parker's Purple and Black. Kind of hard to find the book, sadly, but you can find it in his Academic Exercises ebook. And again, it's a novella. It's short, but it's also an epistolary novel too, or novella. It's told from the perspective of an emperor and his first in command, who's out on the battlefield, who's trying to quell a rebellion that's going on. So it's letters back and forth with what I thought was excellent banter. I wonder if Bridger would agree with the banter here, but but it was so well written, in my opinion. I thought that the character voices were strong and had a certain level of, I don't know, it had such great contrast with the humor, and it goes in a direction that, again, I think is a bit unpredictable, but I guess it'll depend on the reader. For me, it was unpredictable, but I'm terrible about predicting anything. But yes, Purple and Black by KJ Parker. I really think it's a fantastic novella. I can understand why Alan, who recommended it to me, loved it. When I finished it, I was telling him, if I hadn't known that you had read it, I would have reached out and said, Alan, you need to read this. This is so you. But it's a fun, well-written novella and very short again. So I don't want to spoil anything with saying more. And then another one that I have to mention and that I would recommend widely, but I also have a reason why I might not recommend it to certain readers, and that would be I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This is translated by Ross Schwartz, and I just adored this book. So this is a post-apocalyptic story following a nameless narrator, a young girl who's locked in a bunker underground with 39 other women. And I keep saying over and over again that this is a book that is more than about what it means to be a woman. It's about what it means to be a human. And that if I taught a class on what it means to be a human, I would require this book. And I can imagine so many rich discussions page by page for this book. The one drawback for many readers is people who need answers, because there is a lot of openness in this story. It does not give you all the answers you might expect or want. For some readers, that's going to be a big drawback. But I think that the prose is, I think it's accessible, and yet it's well written, and there are so many interesting questions and explorations in the book that I think will resonate widely. I also will have to quickly shout out, even though I might be missing the mark on this, given the low average score on Goodreads or whatever, Fever Dream is just a fun book. So I picked this out of pure fun that I think a lot of readers would enjoy. Brian, I think you would love this book, by the way. I think you should pick this up.
I will.
Yeah.
As I'm goofing around with my camera.
Yeah. And then I'll quickly say a nonfiction book, because I can't just pick one for this category, but which is wild because I usually never want to recommend books to everyone. But I guess this the thing is, these are 4 distinct books that I might recommend to slightly different corners of a wider audience. But for people who like nonfiction, I only read one nonfiction book last year and I'm so embarrassed by it, but it was Hiroshima by John Hershey, and it did not miss. I highly recommend this if you are interested in this part of history, if you're interested in all of what it was involved in the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And this is told in a report style, but it follows, I think, 5 different people, if I'm not mistaken. Now I'm forgetting. There were about 5 different people, I think, that were following where they were right before the bombing happened, what happened to them right in the wake of the bombing, and then following them years and years later, also talking about just how the information of the bombing was disseminated and how people were so confused about what happened to them. It really captures the shock and horror of that event and tragedy of it, truly. But it was so well worth reading. I think it's one of those books that it's difficult, it's unsettling, you definitely do have to be in the right mindset for it. I did have to put the book down at one point because the graphic nature of what's happened it was hard. It was really difficult. There's one particular part that was just difficult to read, but it's one of those books where you finish it and you think, oh yes, everyone needs to read this book. So those are my choices.
Yeah. And Hersey was a journalist, so he knew how to tell a good story, even though it's nonfiction. Mm-hmm. It's not like he was an academic who was just putting together a nonfiction book for, his PhD dissertation or something, where often the writing just isn't all that good. Hersey knew how to write. He really was trying to tell a story, and I agree. It's really, really short too. So
yeah, it's very short.
It's a very easy read, even though the subject matter is not easy.
No, it's not easy. I actually gifted it to Josh, so Josh, I hope you get to it.
It's on my March TBR.
I mean, you could read it in a sitting, and I don't think you'll regret it. And thank you for pronouncing the author's name correctly, Hersey. And I'll add to that. I think it does come through that he is an excellent writer and storyteller, especially giving all of these people's voices, these people a voice in the story. And yet I didn't feel like he embellished or glamorized this horrific event in any way. He does give you details though, and it is very difficult. So wanted to add that as well. But
Yeah.
yes, I do think it's an important read.
I read it when I was probably about 14. I found it on my parents' bookshelf at home and thought, oh, this sounds cool. And I read it and was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
And on I Who Have Never Known Men, that was one I seriously considered for this category. And the reason I didn't is for the reason you said. It is actually very cryptic. And I was thinking, I actually gave copies of the book to my daughters as presents this past year because I really thought they would love this book. I would never give it to my mom because my mom would not like that book. And not because the subject matter wouldn't appeal to her. It's just the way the book is told, I really don't think would resonate with her at all. And that's just the nature of the kinds of books that she likes to read and how she likes to read. So I ultimately ruled it out for this category, but it is one that I would like to say people should read, even if I can't always recommend it.
Yes. I agree with you. I do. I think when you say cryptic nature, there is a bit of that. There is a bit of that, but it's one that I just love the idea. I keep on imagining, I want to teach a class someday where I can break down this novel and just hear different responses to it because there's so much to unpack. There are so many layers to it. There are so many interesting explorations of time and of like what the value of knowledge is and about finding identity through whether that comes from your background or whether you construct that yourself. There's so many layers to it that I continually think about. And I actually reread it. I read it at the beginning of the year. It was one of the first books I read this year. And then I reread it later in the year because I had a fabulous discussion with Overly Average Ben, which I highly recommend for anybody who's read the book. Check out our discussion because we went into a lot of depth. And we talked about actually how we think that the book is served by the openness of the narrative, that it actually adds depth to it in some ways. But yeah, phenomenal book. Derry says, I Who Have Never Known Men, the narrator has no name, there's no plot, nothing happens, and there are no answers. So much to think about. I guess those are my favorite kind of books, though. I am not the most plot-driven reader, though, I guess, in the sense that I think there is a bit of a plot. I mean, there are things that happen one after another that lead you in through the story, but it's not a plot where there's a mission and, I don't know, big plot twist necessarily. So absolutely agree. Let's see. KJ Parker's The Folding Knife. I need to read more KJ Parker, but yes, that's probably his most famous work. Yeah, people put too much stock into Goodreads average ratings. I really don't, but I mean, for what it's worth, like the books I love the most tend to have lower average ratings on Goodreads. And yet an exception to that is this actually has a very high average rating on Goodreads. And it's even a book talk book. So I guess it is resonating for a lot of people. And Jenny Wirtz is here. Hi, Jenny Wirtz. See, they don't look at the graph showing the ratings proportion that tells so much more and showing which titles polarize. Often my favorites. Yeah. Our corner of book readers, I recommend The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. Alternate history with urgent creation of a space agency because Earth is screwed. All right, interesting. And then Derry says, she captured the time period snapshot of bigotry so well. I wanted to throw that book and break something. My book would be phased. I think that is by Tori Tekken.
Yes.
Nice. Hooray for Tori. All right. Excellent. Glad to hear what you all think about that. And yeah. I know you didn't mean me personally, but yes, it's certainly something a lot of people do put stock into for sure. All right. Let's see. Going on from here, we're going to go to favorite book in 2025. Brian, already know it, but
Brian with the new camera. How about that?
Looks good. You look good.
Oh God. Apologies to the viewing public. And for those of you who are just listening, you're better off. Anywho's, yeah, this has been the year of Wars of Light and Shadow and Malazan. And honestly, I said this in my top 10 video a week or two ago that on any given day, any three of these books could be my book of the year, but I'll just do what I did on my video. The runner-up was essentially Grand Conspiracy, book 5 in the Wars of Light and Shadow. It just absolutely loved it. And you know, subjectively or objectively speaking, it's possible that Peril's Gate might even be a better book. But subjectively, I enjoyed Grand Conspiracy more. So I'm going to go with that. But in terms of my favorite book of 2025, as I mentioned in my video, let's see if we can hold this up in front of the FaceTime camera. Kind of came down to these two for me, Midnight Tides and the wait a minute, where are we here? Midnight Tides and the Bone. You know, you can see if they're hunting something.
You got it backwards.
spoiler. It's they're hunting bones. Okay, Bone Hunters and Midnight Tides. And for me, it's almost sort of like the same that I was just mentioning. Objectively speaking, Bone Hunters might be the better book on any day, but subjectively speaking, I really liked Midnight Tides the best of all the Malazan books that I've read so far. The cast was tighter. It was a brand new continent. And as a matter of fact, it was an entirely new cast. Something that Josh mentioned earlier was that I had no idea Steven Erikson had humor in his wheelhouse. And we don't find that out really until the T-Hole and Bug chapters. And they're funny. And it's like, cool. And I loved one of the things that we haven't really seen much in Malazan prior to this is any of the economics of Malazan with a character that we actually like. We do run into stuff where there's plenty of characters we don't care for, but with T-Hole, we actually like him, and we like him in what he's doing with the economy, and we get more of that in Reaper's Gale, obviously. But yeah, for me, it was such a different Malazan book than the prior four. I was just, it was mostly just like surprised going, really? I didn't know that a Malazan book could be like this. And so, and it didn't have a billion characters that I was flipping back to the Dramatis Persona about, because God bless him, but his Dramatis Personas are terrible. Like there'll be 100 characters just listed under other. Right. So you're like, who's this person again? I haven't read about him in like literally 2.5 million words. Let me go to the Dramatis Persona. You find the name and it's just other. Okay, great. So this one was just super different for me. I loved it completely. My favorite book in 2025 was Midnight Tides.
It's such a good choice. Oh, love it. I'm so happy that you love the humor too. I know there's humor in prior books, but yeah, that was the one for me that had me laughing out loud throughout the whole book. So
I think the humor in the prior books was a lot of, you know, the Marines and the bridge burners hanging around in the camp and just kind of talking to each other the way that they do. And it's just kind of funny by nature. But the cleverness of T-Hole and Bug, you don't really see a whole lot with those kind of campfire scenes. You just kind of get the Marines ribbing on each other, which can be funny, but the ultimate sense of cleverness with T-Hole and Bug is just chef's kiss. Love it.
Yes.
Great.
So happy about that. All right, Josh.
Brian, I'm going to need an assist when I get to the end. So one of your books, have it handy.
Okay.
I got a couple like honorable mentions here. So I don't, when I pick my favorite book of the year, I don't consider rereads my book of the year, but my favorite reread, Power of the Dog, would have been up for book of the year had I not like separated those into categories. So by default, my next favorite in that series, the Cartel, is a kind of a runner-up for my book of the year. And then another runner-up for my book of the year would be Midnight Tides. I already gushed about this when I talked about you know, a couple of characters that I loved in here. T-Hole and Bug is my favorites of the year, but I love this book. I'm 7 books in because I finished Reaper's Gale on Monday, 7 books into this series. This is for me the crown jewel. But Brian's going to hold up my favorite book of the year because that was An Autumn War by Daniel Abraham. And that's the third book. And yeah, it's in the other room and I didn't have time to get it. Yeah, An Autumn War is the third book in the Long Price Quartet. And the ending of this literally gave me a very visceral reaction. I mean, I felt like I got punched really hard. And to physically feel like beat up by a work of literature, I mean, just shows the skill of the author. This book shows kind of the cost of magic, the toll of war, and it makes it feel so real. And it's remarkable because that book is only 250 pages, maybe 300 pages, depending on the edition. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That series was one of my favorites. I actually realized I've never done a top 10 fantasy countdown on my channel. So I maybe have to do that next year. But if I made a top 10 fantasy, I mean, Long Price Quartet is in there. And my favorite of the four, because I read them all this year, was definitely An Autumn War.
Yeah, I love it. Excellent. All right. And Bridger.
All right, I'll start with an honorable mention that I have already mentioned in a different category, and that is Robert Harris's Cicero trilogy. Just an outstanding series of novels, but they are fun. I mean, they're clever, they're humorous. There's a lot of historical research that's gone into it. And it's an interesting perspective. One of the things that I've noticed in reading a lot of historical fiction focused on ancient Rome, particularly this time period in Rome, is each author tends to make the subject of their novel the hero. Now, that typically happens in any kind of book, but in this case, I've been reading different historical fiction novels focused on different people who are rivals, who are antagonists to one another, who are coexisting in history they're at the same time, and they have a lot to do with one another, but different authors portray different characters as heroes and villains. And so then it raises the whole question of how much of this really is history and how much of this is just projecting an interesting interpretation of a very limited set of facts that we have 2,000 years later, and trying to tell a story that connects those dots. But each author is telling that story from a very different perspective. And so the Cicero trilogy is perhaps my favorite of those that I've read that focus on these set of characters. And I've read quite a few at this point. My next runner-up, and this was close, because early in the year, I really thought this was going to be my book of the year. Really did. And that is The Deluge by Stephen Markley. Really powerful novel. I mean, it's apocalyptic fiction, but it's pre-apocalyptic until it's actually sort of apocalyptic towards the very end. But it spans about a 30-year period, the whole novel. And it is wordy and wonky and overstuffed and brilliant. It is really an amazing read. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. But it is one that I am very glad that I read. It has a very large cast of characters. I mean, this is a thick, heavy book. There's a lot in it. And you have all of these interconnected characters who are dealing with an anticipated climate apocalypse. Climate change is going to wreak all of these horrible things that are being predicted. And so you have some characters who are trying to stop the climate apocalypse. You have some who are trying to delay it. You have some who are trying to deny it. You have some who are exploiting it, and some who are just trying to survive it. And each of them has their own perspective because there are a lot of different POV characters in this novel. It's a very complicated novel, but just masterfully put together and with a really powerful impact by the end. That like I said, I really thought it was going to be my book of the year. And yet, a few months later, I read a novel that surpassed it in terms of how I continue to think about this book. And I really don't like the cliche of books I just can't stop thinking about, because people really don't spend all their time thinking about the last 20 books they've read. Maybe some people do, but in my experience, that's not usually the case. But I can say that this is a book that I do think about on a fairly regular basis, and little nuances of it come to me, and like, that was an interesting thing, and I can see how that connects to things that are really happening today. And it's a historical fiction novel, written back in the 1950s, I think. Yeah, let's see, probably mid 50s or so, by a best-selling historical fiction author by the name of Thomas Costain. This is called The Tontine, and this is a chunker. This one is probably bigger than The Deluge in terms of total word count. This is the UK edition from the 1950s. When it was published in the US, it was so big they split it into 2 volumes. So if you look for it online, trying to find a copy of it, keep in mind that to get the full novel, there are 2 volumes, and both volumes look almost identical. The covers are essentially the same. So make sure you get both volumes, otherwise you're only getting half the novel. This is like I said, a historical fiction novel that follows a large cast of characters that are part of 2 families. It's set in the 19th century. It starts on the day of the Battle of Waterloo in the early 1800s, and it continues for at least 50 years. The story does, and it's multi-generational, following these families over generations, and it's a kind of a history of, or a saga of, the promise and perils of capitalism in the 19th century, because these 2 families, you have these business partners, who they start off relatively young, and they have an import-export business in England that is successful, but not wildly successful, but reasonably successful. And one of the partners makes a bet on the capital markets, and he wins that bet. It's a spoiler, but it happens really, really early in the book. And as a result, he now has the resources to invest in building that business, building that partnership, and becoming much more of a conglomerate type of company, and an industrialist. And so you have this history of the second industrial revolution going on throughout the 19th century. At the same time, he has a falling out with this business partner, and then they become rivals and enemies, and you have this rivalry throughout multiple generations of their families. And on top of all of this, there's the Tontine, which is the title of the novel. A tontine is a rather dodgy insurance policy of sorts. It's sort of like a lottery, but it's an insurance policy. And you buy into the tontine early in life, and then for every year that you are still alive, you get a little bit of a dividend, the earnings off of that tontine. So everybody's paying into this pool of capital that is managed by the company running the tontine. And then every year you're alive, you get a little bit of the earnings off of that. But as people die, the people in that pool get more and more, because there are fewer people to get the proceeds from the tontine. And the person who is the last one alive gets the principal and all of the capital appreciation that has happened to that principle over 50 years. Now, it's dodgy because if you think about it, it creates some really perverse incentives for the people who are invested in the tontine because, well, you have an incentive to start knocking off some of the other people in the pool. You want to be the last one alive. And it just so happens that when the tontine is announced early in the book, members of these families buy into the tontine. And so they're not only business rivals, they're competing for this gigantic fortune that accumulates over a 50-year period. And it is just such for me, a very memorable novel because some of these characters really resonated with me. Some of them are really sympathetic. Some of them are just, I think Costain did a masterful job weaving together a very complex story, but at the same time, a very emotionally rewarding story and an educational one. There are history lessons in here that are really, from my perspective, fun to read about. So it is my book of the year. It also was one of the books that I mentioned when we did this last year that I was most looking forward to reading in 2025. So I was really happy that one of those that I was looking forward to ended up being my book of the year.
That
Awesome.
is fantastic. Oh, I'm so happy to hear about it. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I just added
Yeah,
it to my TBR. That's awesome.
It's out of print, I think, in hardcover or any kind of paper, but there is an audiobook version of it, which is quite well done. I read it in both formats, sort of back and forth between audio and physical, because part of it I read while I was on vacation and I didn't want to be carting around a really big book. And the audio narrator, I thought, did a really nice job.
Wow. Nice. Well, I'm going to move on to my answer now, but that was, wow, that was amazing to hear about this book. You really did make it sound so interesting, and also just appreciate hearing about a book that I never have heard of before. I have never heard anybody mention that book before. So my choice is incredibly basic, but full of airs
Yay.
by Robin
Excellent
Hobb.
choice.
Yes. I've already talked so much about this book on my channel, but I'll try to say very, very briefly. This book just blew me away. I really think that Robin Hobb's first person narration is unparalleled to me in fantasy. Like I think beyond, nothing against campy science fiction and fantasy, because I enjoy that too. But there is nothing campy about this book to me. I felt so much of a connection with the character, which I know is a bit divisive. I know some people cannot stand Fitz chivalry, but I am not one of those people. I love this character, and I love Fitz in full. Fitz in full forever. That's what I have to say. But this book, it has so much heart to it. As much as I've talked to somebody before recently. I'll put it this way. So I'm trying to say things a little different than what I normally say about this series in this book. I have a friend who said that they bounced off the idea of reading this series because it sounds so depressing. You have a character who just goes through so many horrible things, and it didn't sound like something that would be comfortable. So I can understand why somebody would not want to read this series, considering how much trauma is explored in it. But that said, I think to say that would also be to overlook how much heart is in this story. How many profound moments of connection, of love are in this story with the character and his connections to other characters. And I feel like it's such a profound work in which you feel the character's feelings and emotions without the character himself being totally in touch with all those feelings. Like he's trying to resist them to some degree, and that in some ways makes it more poignant. And yeah, it's just very compelling storytelling. Like nothing happens in the first half of the book. Like really nothing happens. We're in the same place, the same location, having conversations around a table most of the time. And I couldn't be more engaged. I couldn't be more here for every single page. I truly love the way that Robin Hobb writes. I love the way she writes characters. I find her imagery also something that works for me. And this book, again, just so much heart. That's all I have to say. I've already spoken so much about this book. So those are just some brief thoughts here. Yeah, thank you guys all. I loved hearing all of your favorite reads of the year. I did my top 10 reads of the year last week, so I don't want to really rehash them here. Well, I'm rehashing, obviously, this one, but I do hope that people will watch my top 10 reads of the year because I did put, obviously, my heart into talking about this a little bit more, and also my vlog. My vlog, I just kind of went on and on and on. So wonderful to see some favorites here. Yay. And Steve Donahue likes Pompeii. That's great. I should choose King Sorrow, but Mercedes by Stephen King pulled me out of a 3-month-long reading slump. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you loved it. I've never read Mercedes, but glad it landed so well. And then Jenny Word says here, Thomas Costain. Wow, that name is a blast from the past for me. Grew up reading his works. Yay.
Many of his novels were actually adapted to film. In fact, Paul Newman's debut as a leading man on film was in an adaptation of a Thomas Costain novel, The Silver Chalice, which is a terrible film. And Paul Newman completely disowned it. But the novel is better. The novel is better than the film adaptation. And some others, he wrote another one called The Black Rose that was a Tyrone Power movie from the 1950s as well, early 50s. Anyway, I'll probably talk about Thomas Costain a lot more in a future video.
Great. So excited to hear more. Has Bridger been on Why Read? He has. I had him on a solo episode. Like it was just Bridger and me in that episode.
Almost 2 years ago to this day.
That's right. That's right. It was the first Why Read episode of that year. I can't believe that's already been 2 years. Goodness. Let's see. I was just about to ask how many serial killers are spawned in that story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. Favorite new read, Piranesi, lovely read. Favorite reread, To Kill a Mockingbird. Favorite graphic novel, Fun Home A Family. Tragic comic. I hope I'm saying that right. Favorite short stories, Martian Chronicles. I still need to read Bradbury. I've not read any Bradbury, sadly. But Martian Chronicles or Illustrated Man, let me know. And then favorite nonfiction, The Big Sort. Great. Yes, fantastic. All right. Yay. There is as much surviving and or thriving past trauma, the way to live a life around things. Yes. And I also had a fantastic conversation with Derry about the book. So definitely check out her channel. She is that person to go to when it comes to Robin Hobb. Yes, absolutely. All right. Knew you would be happy about that pick. I'm so glad that you heard that. All right. Going on from here, we just have two questions left, but let's go ahead and combine them for the sake of having you on for so long. And so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So this is going to be a combination one, which is the book you want to read in 2025 and didn't, and go ahead and add in, if you want to, your most exciting read or planned for 2026, if you feel so inclined. So Brian, do you have an answer for this?
I do. First, I would like to say, after hearing Bridger's book of the year, I think we may have to change the name of our podcast from Sense and Nonsense to Gravitas and Gruel. I think that might actually capture the spirit of what we're going for here. Gravitas and Gruel. Look for it, subscribe, hit that post notification bell. Okay. Book I wanted to read in 2025, but didn't. That would be continuing along the City Watch arc. I am 3 books in, so Jingo would be the next book. I did not read that. It's just, you guys, this was the year of Malazan and the Wars of Light and Shadow, so I will skip ahead to the next piece of this, which is books I'm most excited for in 2026. One of them I'm actually reading right now. I am 50% into The Crippled God. And I started this on the 1st of January. it reads so much faster than Toll the Hounds and Dust of Dreams. It's not even close. It's actually larger than both of them, but it reads way faster. And so The Crippled God is a January. About a week or so from now, I will have wrapped up the first, main 10 books of Malazan Book of the Fallen. So after a more than 1 year journey, I am very excited to read that. And secondly, equally as much, so this is a tie. I haven't done a tie yet today. Save the best for the last. This is going to be an October read for me. This is going to be the final book in Wars of Light and Shadow, Songs of the Mysteries, or Song of the Mysteries, I should say, by Jenny Wirtz. So this is kind of fun because right now I'm getting an immediate satisfaction of an incredibly exciting book that I don't have to wait for. It's already right in my Kindle right now, and I'm halfway through it. And then I get to cast my gaze into the fall in October because we're doing a long read along and we're just doing one every other month. But we're going to hit book 11 in October, Song and the Mysteries. That would be my answer for the books that I am most excited about in 2026, because honestly, I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself when I'm done with both of those two series. My whole world is opening up to 1 million short books.
You're going to feel like you have so much room to read. That's what's going to happen.
Well, the funny part is like every time I talk about Malazan on the channel, somebody in the comments or multiple people in the comments will be like, well, on your reread, you'll see this. I'm like, you guys, when am I going to get a minute to go? Yeah, sure. I'll go reread that right after I get done rereading The Wheel of Time. So it's like, maybe someday if I win the Powerball and I don't have to work and I can just read all day long, that would be terrific. But yeah, Crippled God and Song of the Mysteries, that's my answer for my most exciting this year.
That is exciting. Fantastic. All right. And Josh.
Okay, I didn't prepare one for this first part of the prompt, something I wanted to read in 2025 but didn't. So I'm just going to skip to what I'm looking forward in 2026. I have a whole bunch of buddy reads lined up. Brian and I are going to do one. We haven't decided what, but we're going to figure out something that we're going to read.
As long as it's before Jimmy and I's buddy read of Earth of the New Sun, which is scheduled for 2042, barring any earlier openings in our calendar.
We're going to figure out something small.
Okay, cool. Okay, that'd be terrific. Okay.
Joanne and I are going to read it, Cloud Atlas. So that's a buddy read that I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a reread for me and a new read for her, but I've been wanting to reread this one quite a bit. So that's one. Let's see. I'm doing Derry and Evie and I at some point are going to read the Key and Vandian Quartet by Megan Lindholm, which was Robin Hobbs' other pseudonym, and that's her first series, and it's 4 really short books starting with Harpy's Flight. Going to do that at some point this year. I'm reading with Carlos. We're going to be reading a duology with Don Winslow's The Dawn Patrol and The Gentleman's Hour. So that's a 2 crime fiction. You notice I'm doing a lot of genres. I'm reading with Kyle The Century Trilogy by Ken Follett, which is 3 chunky historical fiction books that go through the 20th century. With John, I'm reading the Rebecca Roanhorse trilogy, Beneath Earth and Sky. We're reading that at some point. And then the big one, as I went through all that, I paused the camera to go pick these up because they were in the other room. I'm going to be reading the Gap cycle.
The Gap.
Stephen R. Donaldson.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a grimdark space opera series with a... I'm reading this with Jonathan from Words and Time, and we're really excited to do this. He's only committed to the first 2 books because he says if he doesn't love 2 books, he punts from the series. But I'm all in. I'm really excited. And Joanna, you might like the tie-in as well. Donaldson has listed Wagner's Ring Cycle as a primary influence, and that is literally my favorite operas. I've taken vacations just to see those operas in the past, and I really, really love that music, and I love the story and what I've read many books about how he constructed the story and everything. So I'm curious to see. You can see there's a little in the first book. I got the bookmark. I'm about to start this one. I heard it's really dark. There's a pretty rough scene, I know, at least in the first book. But what I've been told from people that have read this series is that it's worth the effort when you get to the end. So I hope that's the case with me. But that's kind of the big read for the year, is The Gap Cycle by Stephen R. Donaldson.
Very cool. I'm excited about Cloud Atlas too. Yay.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what Joanna thinks about Cloud Atlas. The further away I get from that book, the more I like it.
Nice.
And because the more I read, the more I realize nobody writes like that guy. He's just got such a unique authorial voice. He really, really does. And the skill level of that book is bonkers, to use a technical term, bonkers. So, yeah.
Yay. Oh, I love the 2 David Mitchell books I've read so far. So I have high, high hopes. Bridger, what is your answer?
It's a multi-part answer. The first one, I think, Joanna and Josh, you might find this one rather intriguing. It is historical fiction, and I will be reading this very soon because I'm working on a big historical fiction project, and so I want to start getting some of those videos out, and so I'm trying to gap fill, make sure I get all the ones that I want to read before I get to those. So I know that both of you love Guy Gavriel Kay's A Song for Arbonne. I'm going to be reading the novels that inspired A Song for Arbonne.
Send me the list.
What are they? I'm so excited to hear about this.
So there was an author by the name of Zoe Oldenburg who was born in Russia, immigrated to Paris with her family shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution, escaped, and she grew up in Paris. She was educated in Paris and became both a novelist and a historian. And for many years, she really was kind of the foremost historian of the Crusades period and the Crusades themselves. And specifically with respect to the Catholic Crusades, which is the subject matter for A Song for Arbonne, she wrote both the history, the nonfiction history of it, and several novels about it. So there are 2 novels in particular that I want to do. Both of them were written in the early 1960s, like around 1960, 61. The first is called Destiny of Fire. I love this dust jacket. That is someone, a young woman being burned at the stake, very artistically designed there. They were not nice in that ravaging of the Provence area of France in that crusade. So the brutality that happens in A Song for Arbonne is based on reality. And then the other one is called Cities of the Flesh. Now, as you both know, A Song for Arbonne is about the culture, the musical culture, the courtly love culture, the troubadours and bards and all of that going on. That's all captured in these novels. And so I'm really looking forward to reading these to see just how much they overlap with what Kay wrote. And so anyway, that's something that's very, very on the near horizon for me that I'll be reading. I just realized I didn't answer that first part of the question about what I wanted to read in 2025. Okay, this is actually going to sound like I'm pandering, and I really am not, because I really did want to read this in 2025. Specifically, I really wanted to listen to the audiobooks, and that is Janny Wirtz, A Song, or A War of Light and Shadow. I say it, not A Song.
The Curse of the Mystery, yeah.
Right. And I know the first book is out on audio, but I really didn't want to start until there were more volumes out on audio. So Janny, if you are still watching, listening, I really hope those audiobooks come out soon because I do want to get to that. I have not read that series and have been wanting to read it for quite a while. So that is a sincere statement, not pandering.
I love
now,
it.
moving back to what do I plan to read in 2026 that I'm really looking forward to? So something that I intend to do starting pretty soon. I plan to do a couple of read-alongs. Now, I had hoped to start it this month, but I can't yet because I was going to do it on my Substack, but Substack isn't going to let me do any live streaming yet because they haven't rolled it out to all of the Substack members. So sometime soon, maybe next month, maybe starting in March, I plan to do a couple of read-alongs combined with live discussions of the books. And so the one that I probably am going to start with is Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun, which I have not read and am looking forward to reading.
Love that book
and I'm
so
going to follow
much.
that up with another read-along sometime later in the spring that I think will be a lot of fun. And this one I have read, but I read it 25 years ago when it came out. And that is Michael Chabon's The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And so I hope to have some guests to discuss with that. I really am hoping I can get Chabon to be a participant in the discussion of his novel. And I may have some other booktubers join me to participate as well in discussing those. That's going to be a fun debut for me because I haven't done any kind of live discussions or any kind of panels or anything like that at all. So this will be a first. And then my final thing that I'm really hoping ends up being my book of the year at the end of next year. I'm starting Ada Palmer's Terra Ignota.
Cool.
So this has
lightning.
been on my list for a while. I'm finally getting to it.
There's a character named Bridger. So there you go.
So I understand.
I even wondered when I read it. I was like, did Bridger read this? And maybe
No,
his
not yet.
real name isn't Bridger, and he got
It has been on my list for quite a while, and I just haven't gotten to it. I am determined to get to it this year.
It's really, it's a series. So I read book 1 at the beginning of this last year, and I didn't continue. And I feel so split about it because I really struggled to get into the first half of the book. And then the more I read it, the more I ended up enjoying it. I know Jared Henderson, who was in the chat earlier, he said he had the opposite experience. He loved the first half, and then he wasn't crazy the further he got into book 1. But there are certain ideas that Palmer introduces in there about futuristic ideas that I found. I don't know what you'll think, but for me in my brain, I thought this seems entirely plausible in my mind, and I'd not ever. I think it's really fascinating what she explored, and it did make me. I am still kind of curious to continue that series at some point. So I'll just leave it there. But Jenny Wirtz, by the way, said 2 more coming in March.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the first is not a cliffhanger, which I agree with that. Actually, I would say every single one of her books ends with a pretty satisfactory conclusion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I am very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, I am very curious to hear your thoughts about Wars of Light and Shadow, though. Clara and the Sun, I love that book. That was my number 2 favorite book of last year. But part of me is scared that you're not going to like it. And I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'm very curious to hear what you'll think.
My audio cut out when Bridger was talking about his 2026 anticipated reads was Dungeon Crawler Carl 2. Was that when my audio had cut out? I'm going to just, for my own sanity, say that's exactly when my audio cut out, and we'll just leave it at that. No comment required there. I'll just plan that. Yeah.
I will say, though, Brian, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl this last year, just quickly say this, and it wasn't quite for me, but I did laugh out loud way more than I was expecting. And I still look at my cat, and sometimes my cat will be mischievous and then suddenly start licking herself, acting all innocent. And I just see Donut and I just start laughing at her. But
I mean, not to get on a speech about the genre, but the truth is only about 10% of lit RPG and fantasy readers cross over. They're different worlds altogether. And a lot of it is what Bridger was talking about, where the story suffers because the mechanics and the atmosphere become really the main focus and there's no story. And so what I try to do is find story forward where the mechanics are there, the progressions are there, but it's not the point of the book. So yeah. Anyway, but congratulations, Joanna, for trying it at least.
My
At
husband's
least,
loving it. My husband is on book 4 or 5, and he's
yeah.
been binging it. So I've been happy for him enjoying it. So yeah.
Sometimes it just depends. If you've been reading a lot of heavy books and you just need something that's just kind of like, doesn't require a whole lot of mental thought. There you go. Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to
Yeah.
you, Joanna. What are you excited about?
Oh, yeah. What am I excited about? Okay, first of all, to answer the question of a book that I meant to get to this last year and didn't, The Scar by China Miéville. I read Perdido Street Station towards the end of the year before, of 2024, and I loved it. I was surprised how invested I felt in the story. I think actually the one thing I would say is I think that fans of Erickson might enjoy Maybell, is what I'll say. So I would give China Maybell a shot. Perdido Street Station, fantastic read, absolutely brilliant book. Yes, I agree. Oh, with some Okie dude in the chat there. And I also, let's see what else. I intended to finish Book of the New Sun at the end of 2025, and it didn't quite happen, but I'm getting very close. I still have a little ways left in the last book. I'm just past the halfway point in the last book. I'm reading about 3 chapters a day right now with Jake from Nerd Level Rising, and we're going back and forth talking about it. And so that's been fabulous. So those are the main 2 that I meant to get to this last year, and it just didn't quite happen. And then as far as my exciting reading plans, obviously I'm excited to finish Book of the New Sun. Also planning to get to Earth of the New Sun. And Brian, I don't want to throw ideas out there, but I think you and Jimmy were going to get to it. And I think Philip and I were going to get to it. And Jake, I don't know.
Well, Jimmy and I are both, very much into comedic bits, as you may or may not be aware. And we just keep pushing this thing back, so I'm waiting to my 70s, I think, before I pick this book up with him, possibly even longer. But if you can get Jimmy to do it, Philip and I will join you.
All right. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. And speaking of Jimmy, I am actually going to be reading a book with him. And I already forgot the title of it, which I'm embarrassed about, but it's a Thomas Pynchon novel. It's his latest book. So I might be starting that with Jimmy in February. Also starting The Buried Giant by Ishiguro with Murphy in February. I have a lot of reading plans going on right now. And then I also am excited about the Coldfire trilogy by C.S. Friedman. I have not read this, and I've heard fantastic things. And I'm going to be doing a read along of that series with Tori from Tori Talks, with John from Talking Story, and with Anita Gata. So really, really looking forward to that. Obviously, I'm excited to continue my journey with Tawny Man. I am making progress right now in the Golden Foal. And I'm starting my Donaldson journey this next year too with Morden Sneed, the Morden Sneed duology. So I have the first of those books, and I hear great things, at least from a few people who've enjoyed it. So those are my biggest reading plans, or most exciting reading plans, I guess, at the moment. So yes, I guess that concludes our tag.
Well done.
What was that?
Well done. I mean, between you and Bridger added so much to my TBR. It's like I'm going to go back and take notes and actually write all these things down. And Adam, you've been doing it, right? It's like I already know what Josh is going to be reading because we read half the same stuff. But no, this is really, really great.
Yay.
It's super fun. And thank you for inviting me.
Yay. Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And look, we have Thomas in the chat. Hi, Thomas. So I also want to offer, if anybody wants to tag anybody, feel free. I'm going to go ahead and tag, because I told him I would tag him. David from Four Corners of the Page. I am tagging you.
He was in the chat recently.
He was in a Hong Kong airport, and I can't find it now.
Yeah.
But by the way, he's one of those crossover people, Brian. I think you should maybe think of him for a future, if you bring back For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yes.
He might be somebody you'd enjoy talking to, because he's a huge Dungeon Crawler Carl fan.
It's coming back this year. It is. This year was a goofy year, but it's coming back.
He's a massive Dungeon Crawler Carl fan. He's also a massive Malazan fan. So yeah, I think you two would have a lot to talk about. So I think you
Cool.
two should definitely connect. But yes, David is tagged. I'm also going to tag, even though she's not in the chat, Ashley from Library of a Silver Saint, who is a channel
Mhm.
that
I like her.
I just adore. I love Ashley. She started her channel a year ago, and she is just so conversational, so sweet, so fun loving. Just somebody that I thoroughly enjoy hearing her thoughts about books, and I think she would have a lot of fun with this tag. So I'm going to go ahead and tag those two. And also to anybody who wants to do this tag, feel free to consider yourself
Can
tagged.
I tag somebody?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I would like to tag John Minton from the channel Talking Story, because the four of us have been going on for just under 4 hours, and I suspect John can turn this into a 7-hour affair on his own channel himself. So I would like to see his 7-hour marathon of the end of the year book tag.
There you go. Yay. Oh, really quickly, Jenny Wirtz, of course, Words of Light and Shadow are also in my reading plans, just waiting for AP Canavan so we can talk about book 7, which we read almost a year ago now. And by the way, I'm glad that, let's see, that Cold Fire was, okay, what was it? Let me read that again. Cold Fire was messed up as my third book in the series was missing, oh no, 150 pages. That's not cool. But great trilogy. I'm glad you liked it. All right. Yes, and I think that just about concludes it. I think I will like it, so I might check it out. And that is about it for this tag. We've been going for almost 4 hours, so I really appreciate you all so much for being here. Please feel free to let us know your answers in the comment section below if you didn't share it in the chat. And thank you all for listening to us four just talk about this last year. I hope we can do it again next year. And thank you so much to my guests. Thank you guys for being here.
Right.
Thank you.
Super fun. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This was a lot of fun. All right. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody. Bye-bye.